NBA strategy show the other day. Hello to everyone on Periscope. And then I forget the rest. But what he was doing is, Ben, we're on a bit of a delay for YouTube. So he gets everyone involved that's hopped in through everywhere else. And then here we are on YouTube, ready to rock.
Yeah, you got to time it. It's
Got to time.
All about the timing.
I did a pretty poor job of that. But here we are. It is the NFL Deeper Dive Week 11 edition, November 17th, 2019. Dave Loughran, Ben Rasa, and the numero uno ranked player in the world, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. Got 11 games to jump into. Today, we're going to hit on all of them, of course, in depth, some good ones, some awful ones. And I know you guys appreciate it when we spend the bulk of our time on games that mean something. No one blames you for that. But first, fantasydraft.com is the sponsor of the NFL Deeper Dive. And it's the only rake-free fantasy site, daily fantasy site out there, bringing the heat again. $250,000 guaranteed rake-free contest. It's the Hooters main event. Largest and only rake-free contest of its kind that you'll find for Week 11. I know we say Week 11, but it's every week. I mean, it's the largest rake-free contest you'll find of its kind for any week, including Week 11. And don't forget, only on Fantasy Draft are 100% of entry fees paid to the contest winners. So go ahead, sign up at fantasydraft.com today. Use that referral code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and you'll get a free 7-day trial membership, the $250,000 rake-free Hooters main event. When you sign up, get your rake-free 7-day free trial. Head over to fantasydraft.com and use that referral code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Ben, how are we today?
We're all right. Dusting off a busy Saturday. There's only a couple weeks where college basketball and college football intersect when they're both like full slates. Yesterday was one of them. And then we had a little soccer action in Europe. Busy day, but a good week so far.
And you, Alex, how's life?
It's good, man. Every day of NFL, it feels like it might be the first day of the rest of my life, with these big prizes. So I'm sure other guys feel that way at this point in the day. I think we're all winning $1 million here, so it feels good.
I love it. It's going to be tough for all three of us to do that, but if it happens, I'm with you. Sunday morning really is like the adult Christmas.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's like Christmas, except the boxes don't always have presents and you're paying a bunch of money for them.
Isn't that true?
That's definitely a good point. All right, boys, let's jump into it. Of course, happy to have everyone with us as always, hoping we all crush today. We're going to do our best to make sure that happens. Dallas at Detroit. This game actually opened with a pretty high total. It's still up there, but it's come down 46.5. Dallas 7.5-point favorites on the road, 27-point implied total, 19.5 for the Detroit Lions. Jeff Driscoll at the helm. Matthew Stafford remains out with broken bones in his back. What are your thoughts here with the home team? Let's start there, Alex. Again, no Matt Stafford. I was really, really hoping that Ty Johnson would be out, and it looked like throughout the week he would be. Really was going to be pretty heavy on J.D. McKissic, but that no longer appears to be the case. Johnson has no injury designation heading into this 1 p.m. game. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Kenny Golladay, who's been great this season. You've got Marvin Jones and guys like Hawkinson. But all in all, not the most appealing Detroit squad.
Yeah, I think the size price these guys, like they're going to be playing with Matthew Stafford. Of course, Jeff Driscoll, not nearly as good a quarterback. So the end result is you're paying a lot for a team that's not going to do that well usually. So I don't want to just leave it there because I know we got an hour and 15 minutes here. I kind of like your J.D. McKissic take. I think that would have been good if Ty Johnson's out, but now it's too many cooks in the kitchen. And then all the Detroit receivers seem to be a little bit expensive. So it's going to be hard for me to land on them, but how about you guys?
Yeah, Ben, McKissic played 70% of snaps last week, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he has a decent game today. He ran the 6th most routes of any running back in the league in week 10. He had 7 targets, hauled in 6 of them. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's actually the most involved running back, but Ty Johnson being back in the mix really hurts that. I certainly would have had a ton of McKissic today, but no longer the case. What are your thoughts on the Lions?
Yeah, I don't have much to say. I'll echo your thoughts. McKissick was interesting, but now, he's cheap, but he's not that cheap. And
Right.
with kind of muddy waters, there's just other players in other games, I think, that you can pay down at running back specifically. The rest of the team is, it's interesting. The one thing, Driscoll threw the ball 46 times last week.
Crazy.
Now
Against the Bears.
Yeah, that I don't see. Now, of course, if he's doing that every week, even though the targets are going to be somewhat inefficient, you can still justify going to these receivers. I just don't think we see that, to be honest. I expect that volume to drop a little, and it puts the strain on guys like Golladay and Marvin Jones that much more. Now, they are underdog at home in the Dome, so that is a positive. But overall, the Lions are pretty far off my radar, pretty much across the board.
What are your thoughts on the other side here? Dallas, like I mentioned just a moment ago, 27-point implied total. Of the 22 teams on this slate, the Oakland Raiders, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Saints have higher implied totals than the Cowboys. So projected to score quite a bit of points as big road favorites. But I guess when you talk about Zeke, let's kind of incorporate where we're at on him compared to guys like McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette, being that, he's right in the middle of all of that.
Yeah, it's hard not to like him against a Lions defense that certainly has struggled to stop the run. Now, he's coming off a bad effort against Minnesota, but the volume is there, 20-plus carries in 4 straight games for Zeke. Game script is favorable. I do think he gets back on track here. If you don't want to go there, of course, Dak is playing fantastic. You've got Gallup. You've got Amari Cooper. So there are options. But in terms of Zeke specifically, he's probably ahead of everybody except McCaffrey. He's someone that I'm just going to continue to kind of pay. But I like him over a guy like Dalvin Cook, despite Cook being another great matchup at home.
So is it safe to say that you don't have any concerns about Zeke, despite a pretty underwhelming campaign at his price point? I mean, look, I don't think there's any reason to be worried whatsoever, but this team we're seeing finally has a passing attack. And I think you'd agree that wasn't the case in past seasons. Everything, they lived and died by what Ezekiel Elliott did on the ground. And now through 9 games, he has 6 of them with less than 20 fantasy points. So while he's still been good, there's no question that they haven't relied on him as much as they've needed to in the past.
There's no doubt. But I will say, to counter to that, he's been on the cusp of having really good games, and it hasn't got there. A lot of middling games, 65 yards and a touchdown, a couple targets. I think with a little more efficiency or just some more touchdown variance, he can easily start churning out what we saw against the Jets and the Eagles, which were obviously his best 2 games. So in a bounce back spot in a dome against a bad defense like the Lions, I definitely am buying.
Okay. How about you, Alex? The Dallas Cowboys.
I'm kind of interested in Zeke, but I do have some major concerns here. So this year, he's only been targeted on about 15% of his routes, and that's pretty concerning for a guy who's supposed to be kind of doing it all. He's not averaging many receptions or yards per game receiving. The rushing is totally good. I think he's as good as anybody this week in that respect. But then when you add it all up, it kind of is site specific because on FanDuel at 8,400, I think that's a really nice price point for Zeke. But 9K on DraftKings, which is a lot more, that you're running into a huge opportunity cost with guys like Christian McCaffrey and Michael Thomas at that point.
What about the passing game? Of course, you've got Amari Cooper, just an absolutely spectacular season thus far. When you look at where he stacks up against other wide receivers, man, it's been insane. He's got, in terms of receiving yards, he's 3rd in the league behind Michael Thomas and Mike Evans. Fantasy points, he's 4th in football in a PPR standpoint. You look at targets, all of it, he's been outstanding. Now, in a spot like this, I think we have to consider the matchup, and generally speaking, you wouldn't be too concerned here. He's going to see Darius Slay's shadow, I would think. Is that enough to be a little bit concerned, or do you think a guy in Cooper who's beat difficult matchups all year can do it again?
I'm pretty interested because I think that from what I've seen, people aren't really buying into the Cowboys stack here. So I think there's a lot of potential. We're seeing teams like Carolina and Baltimore be some of the higher owned passing offenses of the week or quarterback plays. But Dak has been exceptional this year, over 8 yards per pass. And if he has to throw the ball a decent amount, that could add up to a huge performance for any of these guys, but especially Amari Cooper, who, as you mentioned, is getting a ton of yards every game.
Okay. Ben, you talked to Ezekiel Elliott. What about the pass weapons here, including Dak Prescott at quarterback?
Yeah, I think that if they're not getting a ton of love at the spot, we mentioned the opportunity, and I like Zeke, I've said that, but the opportunity cost, you can pivot off Zeke to a ton of good options, and then you could attack the Cowboys in a different way and get extra leverage. So no problem with Dak. And of course, Amari, you said it. Two things that I like. One, he's shown that he can beat tough matchups. And two, Dak doesn't seem to really care. It's not one of those quarterbacks that says, you know what, I'm not going to test Slay. I'll just go to Gallup. He goes right after the number one corner regardless with Amari, and it's shown that it can be effective. So you can absolutely go there with the Cowboys pass catchers.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Slay, but Amari's just been able to beat tough coverage really all year. I think, again, you guys both pointed out, if this team's flying under the radar, then there's definitely merit to looking at the Dallas Cowboys, because there are a few teams today, and we see this every week, that are just going to be ridiculously popular. Specifically, Ben, the entire NFC South.
True story. Yeah, we got all divisional games there, and the Falcons-Panthers, which we're about to talk to, is going to be super popular.
Yes, it is. I mean, I could make arguments for every team in that division that they're the top team this week. Even the Atlanta Falcons. I don't see that being the case at all. But given some of the value on that team, they definitely stand out. Let's move over to that one, Alex. Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers. You've got a pretty significant total on this game, divisional game. Usually these are played pretty close. You know, you just look last week and Atlanta comes in and massive upset in New Orleans against the Saints. Nobody saw that coming, but it's never a huge surprise when a divisional team puts up a solid effort against one of their divisional opponents. 48.5 total. This is where I find it interesting. Now, the Panthers have a 26.3 total, 22.3 for the Falcons. This line opened at 6.5 points. It's down to 4. So you obviously, 2.5 point movement here since this line opened. I would say it's pretty significant. Of course, all of your projections have Vegas baked into them, but what do you make of this game here in Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty interesting to see that spread after Atlanta went and had such a big week last week, pulling off a huge upset. And Carolina, I don't think, is nearly as strong a team as New Orleans, who they faced last week. So I think that it's like an interesting Vegas line here. Just going off the 26 for Carolina, that's pretty encouraging for guys like Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and Curtis Samuel. Greg Olsen also chalky. I as you mentioned it though, it's like every guy on this team is super high owned this week, and that seems like people might be overdoing it a little bit because Christian McCaffrey could, if he has a big game, that pretty much makes it hard for anyone else on the team to have one. So that could be an interesting move where you go McCaffrey and then you're kind of taking out some guys with DJ Moore and Greg Olsen from contention.
All right, Ben. So you heard where Alex is at here initially. Christian McCaffrey, ridiculously expensive, but he's just been outstanding. The big question I have for you, and this is a similar question I'm going to ask you on Michael Thomas once we get there. Christian McCaffrey goes for 30 fantasy points. At this price, it doesn't kill you. How worried are you that not having McCaffrey would kill you on this slate?
No, I think you can get away with that. The difference, though, I'll speak to both sides of it. I wouldn't be concerned if I didn't have it, just because you have Zeke, you have Dalvin, you have other guys that can exceed that or be right there as well. But the one thing I will say, the way I found the slate to build, there's a lot of value. And then raw points comes into play a little bit more. So even though, multiplier wise, it may not be ideal. It can work out if some of these cheap options give you a ridiculous, point per dollar. And then someone like McCaffrey, just on a raw point potential, can be super pertinent. So I do like him. The injuries seem to be more maintenance than anything real. I expect the volume to be there once again in a game that Carolina, they have to have this game. There's no doubt about it. At home, lost a tough one in Lambeau last week. So the problem with this game is what Alex talked about. You could go 5 different directions. You could pretty much target anyone on the Panthers offense with merit.
One thing I do wonder is every Christian McCaffrey lineup going to have Brian Hill?
Probably. Or Gage. Like I can't imagine that one of those two in terms of strong correlation. And you want to be aware of that because that is going to be a ridiculous over-owned correlation.
Yes, no question about it. Turn 10,500 into what? Like 14,000 once you get Russell Gage in there. What about the pass catchers, though? You've got McCaffrey, but then you've got someone in DJ Moore. I've said this. He's really been one of the most unheralded receivers this season. And I say that because he's only found the end zone once, but he's been really good. You look at targets. He's towards the top of the league in targets this season. Kyle Allen has targeted him frequently. He's 13th in yards this year among all wide receivers, which again is pretty encouraging. And despite only scoring 1 touchdown, he's still top 15 in fantasy points. So I still think you're getting a discount on DJ Moore. And all you need is one game where he can actually cross the goal line to skyrocket those fantasy points.
Oh, yeah. I like him a lot. So we were talking a little before the show, and I was agreeing that this is one of the weirdest slates, though, of the year for me. And part of it is because when you if you like McCaffrey and you like Moore, well, if you put those two in, it's kind of hard to not play a cheap Kyle Allen, just thinking about what would really need to happen. And then you're funneled to a certain type of build. So it's a little difficult because the plays objectively I really like, but roster construction wise, it's hard not to just start jamming Kyle Allen at every turn just because of all these guys in really good positions.
For sure. And Alex, when I say unheralded, I don't mean this week, right? I don't mean from an ownership standpoint because DJ Moore is going to be very popular. As a matter of fact, look at this. Our ownership projections right now, last updated less than an hour ago. You have Hill, Moore, McCaffrey, Olsen, Julio, Kyle Allen, all of those guys within maybe the top 10, 15 of ownership right now. Of course, Curtis Samuel is up there, but he's not nearly as high as some of these other guys. How do you factor that into your research?
Well, I think that that's kind of interesting because this team total of 26 is pretty high, but that's not one of the highest we've seen all season by any means. The matchup versus Atlanta is good, but not great. They give up more yards than average in passing, but they're nowhere near the worst defense in the league. So I think that it's going to be certainly hard for all of them to get there. So given they're all popular, maybe I just pick my favorite one and stick them in there. But I don't hate a game fade too. If Carolina goes for less than 20 points, you could easily see a lineup with no Panthers on it and winning $1 million. And there's so many good spots this week that it's pretty easy to do that. The one thing I will say is if all the chalk goes off, like the Brian Hills and the Miles Sanders, to me there's a big question marks about these guys. But if they do hit, then Christian McCaffrey probably will be in the winning lineup as well.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good point. Let's actually make that transition over to Atlanta, and we'll start with who is right now projected to be the highest owned player on the slate. I don't think that changes. The Falcons are 22.3 total. They're 4-point dogs, but Brian Hill saw 20 carries last week. He didn't exactly do a ton with them, but now you're looking at a backfield that really has nobody else. What do you have? Quadre Ollison and Kenyon Barner are the two other backs in this backfield. Brian Hill is likely going to get the lion's share of opportunities. The line has been moving towards Atlanta, which is encouraging, so that maybe this game stays competitive. How much Brian Hill do you see yourself getting to today is, of course, a very, very popular option?
I think that among the chalk players, he's the one I feel the most confident in because we feel pretty secure about this workload of, getting a majority of the action. As you mentioned, there are a couple of guys that will be in the mix behind him. So he's a good play, not like a smash lock by any means. And one thing that I feel like people are overlooking is Devonta Freeman has been in this spot like all season, and he's been busting every single week. So I feel like it's a pretty good chance that Brian Hill doesn't work out as well.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable with it. I mean, if he's going to get 20 carries and a couple targets, I'll live with the result. In cash, I think you just do it. Tournaments, there's merit. As Alex talked about, we talk about game stacks a lot. Game fades is a thing as well. But Ryan Hill is a guy, I mean, I'll be honest, there's partly, I think, a small bias on my part. I've seen him play a lot. He went to Wyoming there with Josh Allen. I watched a lot of those games in my time. This is a guy that's pretty dynamic back. Now, Kenyon Barner, I assume, takes some of the pass duties. Allison, I don't know about what he can really do, to be honest. So with Carolina, the way to attack them is clearly on the ground, one of the worst DVOA against the rush. Brian Hill's going to have his opportunities, and I feel pretty comfortable taking that stab with him.
Okay, so how comfortable do you feel, excuse me, with the rest of this offense? I'll lead you into it with this. I'm a huge Julio Jones guy, but I'd be lying if I didn't say James Bradbury concerned me, because he does. He's held Mike Evans below 100 yards scoreless in both games they've met this season. He's held DeAndre Hopkins to 5 for 41. I think he's allowed one. Yeah, he's allowed one career 100-yard game to Julio Jones. Now, there was one in 2016. If you remember, Bradbury was a rookie, and he got hurt in the first quarter. Julio Jones went for 300 yards. So it's only one game. I get it. But this guy is very, very, very good at eliminating number one receivers. And I'll do you one better. There are maybe, I think, four players allowing a lower QB rating this season than James Bradbury. And those guys are really, really spectacular. Here they are. With at least 100 coverage snaps, by the way. Tre'Davious White, Stephon Gilmore, Richard Sherman, and Cameron Sutton. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he is a guy that you certainly can't just say, oh, it's Julio, he can beat any matchup. Now, that is true, but this is somebody that does cause disruption and can limit what I think is going to be – Julio's going to be popular just because of this game environment. Everybody is. And that is somewhat concerning. Now, it's not to say when I load up on this game, I'm not going to have Julio just because he's so good. I think you need him in there.
Right.
But it's an interesting situation with no Hooper. We know Sanu is gone. I know a lot of people are going to go to Gage. Calvin Ridley is kind of just sitting there, and he's that next option.
I love Calvin Ridley today for that exact reason.
Yeah, exactly. He's in a pseudo dead zone relative to the game, and this is a guy we've seen, the ceiling is not the problem. It's the floor more often than not. So in a tournament environment, we know this guy can catch 2-3 touchdowns in a game. We've seen it before. Red zone target, athletic, going to have a much better matchup, of course. So 5,500 on DraftKings, reasonable across the industry fantasy draft. I like him a lot as a way to kind of get some Falcons exposure without being obvious.
Me too. Really like that spot. And, when you're talking ownership, like I said, Alex, you're going to get ownership across this entire game, and you're going to get a lot of it. There's no question. But at the same time, a few of these guys are going to be less popular than the other. Calvin Ridley coming in at 10%, which, again, is way lower than most players on this team. What else are you doing with the passing attack here, Alex?
So I'll mention that although this game is going to be really popular, the Atlanta side, aside from Brian Hill, is a lot lower owned than Carolina side. So I think guys like Ridley, as you guys mentioned, make a nice play. Russell Gage, he's someone that gets a lot of short targets, so that's kind of an interesting value play because with PPR he can rack up a big score. Julio, I mean, there's so much variance with the wide receivers every week that I think that by no means a lock, and there's some better ones out there like Michael Thomas, but when he booms, I mean, you're going to need him to win. So I think I always approach it like just kind of pick your in each lineup, pick a different guy like that, like Michael Thomas or Julio or Amari, because one of these guys is probably going to go out and break the slate.
So because this game could be the difference maker on this slate, Alex, I'll ask you and then Ben, your favorite players, your top 2 players from each side, of course, factoring in ownership and salary.
I mean, I don't want to sound too basic, but on Atlanta, I will mention I like the stack a lot. But position players, Brian Hill and Julio. I know that's shocking. On the other side, I'd probably go with Christian McCaffrey and Greg Olsen. I'm a little bit more tepid on the receivers.
Okay, Ben?
Be Brian Hill and Ridley from the Falcons, and it would be McCaffrey and Olsen from the Panthers.
Okay, Brian Hill and Ridley for me. And on the other side, yeah, McCaffrey. And I know he's popular, but DJ Moore has just been very good. So I'm going to continue to ride with that. Let's talk. Oh, and by the way, spending a lot of time on some of these games, I can assure you, other games we will not be spending much time on either, and you'll thank us for that. Indy, Jacksonville. Ben, here's a game where there isn't a whole lot that stands out as appealing. I also heard a stat that every game that T.Y. Hilton's been inactive in his career, the Colts have lost. So someone may need to fact check me on that, but it's actually not that surprising. Anyway, the total in this game, not particularly high. Once again, that's to be expected. Right now it's sitting at 42.5. Colts 2.5-point favorites. They got a 22.5 total, 20 to the Jags. But a couple things here. Number one, Nick Foles has been reinstated. He's going to play in this game and start this game. Gardner Minshew fizzled out a little bit over the past couple of weeks. But you know what? Valiant effort keeping them afloat in the AFC South. T.Y. Hilton is sidelined. Paris Campbell, of course, is sidelined. Devin Funchess, there was a thought that he might get back. He remains sidelined. There are a lot of injuries to this team. We get Jacoby Brissett back, but he's not going to have a ton to work with. How are you approaching this game? Feel free to hit on both sides. Of course, Fournette and Foles and everyone on the Jacksonville side as well.
Yeah, it's a game that I don't have a ton to really say. It's weird. We got 2 new quarterbacks in the sense that, they were either hurt. Now they're back in business. Colts need the game at home. It is in a dome, which is nice, but it's hard to go to Brissett just because he doesn't have weapons. He's got the 2 tight ends, which I get. I was on Doyle a bit last week, but both of them are playing like 2/3 of the snaps, which it's okay. But I kind of wanted one to maybe emerge and we could lean there. You have Marlon Mack in the backfield who the volume is going to dictate at a middling price tag. I'm pretty comfortable with it, but again, he hasn't had that monster. Really, week 1 was his explosion. Hasn't done much since.
Yeah.
So other than that, and then quickly, and I'll pass it back on the Jag side. I mean, Fournette's going to get volume, but the price is finally adjusted a bit. D.D. Westbrook is healthy, but they're coming, it's been a little hiatus with the bye. He was injured, and with the new quarterback, I'm not sure exactly what to make of Foles and them. For me, I probably let other people try to chase it.
Okay. I'm honestly don't see any different. I don't have any different opinions on my side. Fournette's somebody that I'm always willing to take a stab at because of the abundant volume. But aside from that, it's tough to feel confident anywhere. Alex, what about you? Both sides of this one.
I think this game may go a little bit under the radar compared to the potential here. Now, it is hard to figure out kind of which pass catchers to go to in this game because Shark is pretty expensive these days. He's really the standout in Jacksonville and Indianapolis. You guys mentioned Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle kind of splitting the work. I'd probably go to Ebron as a value tight end this week because he did get a rise in his playing time. And he's the one that gets targeted more when they're both on the field together. He's pretty cheap across the industry, and tight end's pretty weak this week, so I think I might go to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Fournette and Mack as well.
Fournette and Mack. All right, top plays from let me ask you this. Do you have any priorities for tournaments in this game, Alex?
Yeah, I think Fournette. I mean, I've loved this guy every week, and Now the Jags have a pretty competitive game, so I think it should be a decent one for fantasy. They're about an average defense, Indianapolis, and Fournette. He's going to boom or bust with the fortunes of the team because he makes up so much of the Jaguars' offense that if the Jaguars go out and exceed expectations, Fournette could easily put up a winning performance. I mean, he gets as much volume as anyone else.
Okay. Ben, anything else from this game?
I have a little Colts defense, just because I think that it's a little unknown what this Jags offense will look like in the dome at home. But no, this is not a game that I really like.
Okay. Let me bounce back to you here, Alex, as we keep it moving on to game 4. Miami, Buffalo. Miami has won 2 straight games. This was a team we were talking about going winless on the season, and now they're on a winning streak. Pretty amazing. If they won this game in front of, dozens of home fans, I would say, I would say they have a legitimate shot of winning. Tre'Davious White is outstanding. He's probably going to take Devontae Parker out of this game. By the way, if you're looking at wide receiver cornerback matchups on Pro Football Focus, the last update I believe was yesterday. So they don't have Bradbury in. They don't have Bradbury on Julio. So just keep an eye on that if you're simply looking at the advantage, the percentage advantage. But Devontae Parker going to see some Tre'Davious White, and then you've got guys like Albert Wilson and Gesicki. This is to say that I don't have a lot of confidence at all in Miami's offense. And Kalen Ballage, I actually tweeted the other day, he ranks, if you use like Pro Football Focus metrics, elusiveness, breakaway, percentage, yards after contact per attempt, he is dead last in every category except elusiveness. David Johnson is last. Ballage's longest run this year is 8 yards. So again, not excited about Miami's offense, but I just don't have a lot of love for Buffalo's offense either. And Singletary's prices come up. He went back to seeing still a ton of snaps, but not a lot of work. John Brown's a decent, deep threat option, but he's been very quiet lately. A lot of that in large part because of Josh Allen just looking very mortal at the quarterback position. What do you think about this game starting on either side you want?
Yeah, I think probably not the most obvious game for fantasy. Buffalo. If Josh Allen loses this game, that's got to be rock bottom losing to Miami here.
Oh, yeah.
So it's tough to land on him in DFS, though, because John Brown is actually really expensive across the industry. On DraftKings, he's 6,400. And compared to other guys like DJ Moore in that price range, he's not even in the picture. On the other side, I actually really like Kalen Ballage. And the reason why is because in that price point, like the lower end of running backs, everyone is looking at Miles Sanders. And I'm just not really sold. I think there's a lot of assumptions people are making that may not be reliable. So I think Kalen Ballage is much safer. I mean, he'll probably not have a good game either, but he'll be low owned. And he was on the field for most of the game last game for Miami. If he continues to get that kind of workload, that gives a lot of upside.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree there. And to be fair, Bills defense has been exposed in the run game decent amount lately. They gave up over 100 to Adrian Peterson. Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard rushed for 218, 147 yards on the ground to Cleveland last week. Kalen Ballage is, and I say this, and not being hyperbolic, not trying to be like, he's terrible, but he is cheap, and he probably will see a lot of targets on an offense that won't be able to get the ball moved through the air. Ben, over to you. What you got here, fella?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, the Bills, they have the easiest schedule. If they're going to make the playoffs, clearly they need to win this game. There's no doubt about that. But Miami is playing a little better. Now, Ballage, as Alex talked about, the reason to like him, I think, is because Hill is so polarizing in a similar price point. This guy's going to get just as much, if not more, work in a game that, yeah, they're a slight dog at home, but it's not like they can't win this game. And even so, he's going to get his chances. Now he's bad, so that doesn't help the situation. But you know what? That can be overcome at a reasonable price tag. So Ballage from Miami is really the only spot that I'm looking. John Brown, a little overpriced as we've all talked about, but he does have some home run ability there. It's just a game that I don't see much from. And these are, you talked about this at the top, Lofty. There's a couple games on the slate that I really think you have to be careful with. There's just not much to look at.
There really isn't. So do you guys have, would you say Balazs is a priority for you, Alex, at his current price?
I think he will be pretty reasonably owned by me. I haven't really built a ton of lineups yet, but I'll take a look at my fantasy draft in a little bit. I think that sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. One other guy I want to mention is Alan Hearns. He just signed a contract extension in Miami for 2 more years. So there's a little nice narrative there.
They really struck gold there, huh? Ben, anything to add here? Any guys you really like?
No. I think as simple as that is no. I think that Balazs is a very reasonable way to get away from Brian Hill. If you want to do that, I don't know if you can. If you pair them, I get it, but the opportunity cost of double running back like that, I think, is a little much to overcome from a raw points perspective.
I hear you. Let me stay with you with Baltimore and Houston. This game's a little bit difficult for me for a couple of reasons. One, the total is currently the highest on the slate, 51.5. Ravens 4.5 point favorites, 28 point total there, 23.5 for Houston. When you're looking at a guy, Lamar Jackson, just you can play him every single week. It doesn't really matter. Cash tournament, go ahead and do your thing. Of course, Mark Andrews coming off his first career 2-touchdown performance last week against a terrible Cincinnati defense. Marcus Brown with his first really solid week, thank God, in a while. And then Mark Ingram, doing what he does best, getting less carries than his quarterback, but finding the end zone. So let's try and tie this in, because on the other side, like if you're looking to stack Houston, it's tough, man. The Marlon Humphrey has been phenomenal. Jimmy Smith is back. And outside of DeAndre Hopkins, who do you have any confidence in? Like you go into a Kenny Stills here, a Kike Kuti, like I don't know what to do in terms of running it back outside of, say, hopefully DeAndre Hopkins can beat this really difficult matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got Houston.
Oh, and Marcus Peters, sorry, too.
Yeah, he's scoring like a touchdown a game somehow. Every time I look up, that guy is
crazy.
It's absurd.
And did you see how bad Jalen Ramsey's numbers have been since he came to LA?
Yeah, times are tough. Thank God the Rams and the Bears are not on that. That would take actually one second to break down, but that's neither here nor there. It's just crazy that the Texans you just talked about, like highest over under Deshaun Watson. I don't think they're going to be overly popular, yet they're not really a priority for me either. Now Watson's fantastic. Hopkins is fantastic. But, when you mentioned before about Bradbury, you mentioned 4 guys. I was in my mind trying to guess who they were. I would have said Marlon Humphrey.
Yes, I was surprised by that as well.
He's been fantastic. We've seen him take away – it feels like it's Tyler Boyd every week, but he's taken away other people too.
It does feel like dude. He's been in the slot a lot too, because a lot of the opposing team's best players have been their slot receivers, but he's pretty much taken anyone he faces out of the game outside of a couple receptions.
He's been great. And so, DeAndre Hopkins, of course, is like Julio and he can win tough matchups, but you're paying a lot for a very difficult spot. And you've said it, outside of that, where are you going to go? You can take a flyer on a guy like Stills. This backfield is not to be trusted. I don't have interest in the tight end situation. So for me, despite it being a game that could get a little up and down, I don't have a ton to say, and that is a little scary.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of, let's see where he ranks in passer rating allowed. We'll do this real quick. So Marlon Humphrey, dude, he's still allowing a 79 passer rating. That's one of the lowest in the entire game. Not a lot of guys have, let's say if you were to take 300 coverage snaps and see where Humphrey ranks, that would put him top 10. But it feels like he's been even better than that, honestly.
It does. And that's something we'll have to see. Hopkins is a great player, but again, very tough matchup.
God, he's allowed only 300 yards on the season, 385. That's crazy. Alex, what do you think? We both kind of just broke it down a bit here. It's an odd game from the Houston side because Baltimore's secondary has looked so much improved. Do you still get there?
I have some interest in both sides of this game. I think that Baltimore is a tough matchup because they played at the slowest pace in the league so far this year. In addition, they run really long drives. So what happens is in most of the games they play, they have the majority of the plays in the game. So I expect Houston to run fewer plays than average by a lot. But I don't see any reason why they can't be productive when they're on the field. And one guy I'm really looking at is Kenny Stills. With Will Fuller out, he's been playing almost the whole game. He's been someone who's been targeted when he's been on the field a lot. We haven't seen any big games yet, and I think that will drive the ownership down, and that's when I want to buy low.
Okay, fair enough. How about the opposite side? Talking Lamar, talking Marcus Brown, Ingram, of course, Mark Andrews. Are you prioritizing anything from the Baltimore side?
Or just real quick for me, if I have the money, Lamar makes a great play. You can run him alone. You can pair him with his two obvious weapons. That's about it. I didn't get to Ingram much. Still a little pricey for me.
Okay. Alex?
I think Lamar is a great cash option. Every week I'm talking about how tepid my interest is, and then I end up making my lineups and have a ton of them. But I think this might be the week where that doesn't end up happening because what I'm just seeing is Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews have seen their prices rise far beyond their average performances on all the sites. One exception being Marquise Brown is pretty cheap on FanDuel, so I kind of like the Lamar Marquise Brown stack on there. But I think you can just do a lot better than a Baltimore team that's playing a little bit of a tough team in Houston. And there's so many other great spots on the slate.
Okay. Ben, close this game out before we move it along.
It's just, the Ravens are so unique with what they're doing right now. It's hard to really look at Houston's defensive profile and draw any conclusions because I don't know how they are going to match up against the guy that's running for sometimes like 150 yards on the ground at the quarterback position. So the points, someone in chat, Dwayne brought this up and he's right. The points are going to have to come from somewhere, obviously. This is a high total game. It's just very difficult to find the better players are in the worst matchups. And then you have cheaper guys that are obviously secondary options. So if you have the money, of course, Lamar, high floor. But other than that, I don't think this game is as easy as a slam dunk as you would think for a 50-plus point total.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think you've got to at least look at these cheap running backs throughout this week in that 4K range and say, well, Carlos Hyde is someone that is averaging almost 20 carries a game, especially in favorable spots. I don't know how favorable this is. Of course, the matchup isn't, but in terms of it staying close, his carries are 19, 19, 12, 26, 21. That's over his last, 5 games? You could do worse than Carlos Hyde, I think.
Yeah, you just have – he's going to be – if you say, you know what, I don't want Hill, I don't want Balaj, he is a pivot that nobody, I think, is going to go to if you really want to go against the grain.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, how much riskier is he than Kalen Balaj? I'll answer that for you. He isn't, at all. 2% ownership right now. So that's one spot where I think you could get to that wouldn't be all that crazy. Talk about Minnesota and Detroit, Alex. This is one where I just don't have a ton of interest. I know that the Vikings have a 25.5 total, well aware, but that's basically where it ends for me. You have an over-under of 40.5. It's the second lowest on the entire slate, ahead of only the Jets and Skins. The Denver Broncos have a 15-point implied total, 25.5 for the Vikings, 10.5-point favorites. The problem I have is I just have a lot of respect for this Denver defense. While their offense is awful, their run defense, according to Pro Football Focus, ranks first in the league. Their coverage rating ranks third in the league. Pretty much across the board, the Broncos have been very, very solid. Overall defense, they're they're fifth. I mean, really, you can look at any metric and you're going to see that this has been a very good defense outside of that first week or two of the season. I don't know. It's tough for me to fall in love with anyone from Minnesota, but I suppose you can make an argument for Diggs because Thielen's out, but it's not like Stefan Diggs is going to have an easy matchup against Chris Harris Jr. whatsoever. And then if you're playing Dalvin Cook, that means you're likely going to have to forego using Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think that Minnesota is not going to be very popular today aside from Cook. Cook is in a good spot. I mean, they're a huge favorite. The matchup isn't ideal, but they should have the ball a lot of the time because Brandon Allen hasn't not that great a quarterback. So I think one contrarian play I like here. Well, there's two I like. Diggs. I think that with Thielen out, he should be able to put up some big numbers. Hasn't happened quite yet recently, but there's a lot of potential there. And then Irv Smith, with Thielen out, has seen his playing time increase, and at tight end, there's no real lock plays. So I think that he could be a real low-owned guy that maybe if he goes out and gets a touchdown could win you a tournament.
Okay. Ben, what about you?
Clearly, yeah. I mean, the Vikings are a huge favorite at home. They haven't been tested at home for, undefeated every game by double digits. I don't even know if that changes here. I expect a pretty comfortable win. Dalvin Cook, you guys mentioned it. Clearly, in a vacuum, he's a fine play, but it's an opportunity cost against guys like Zeke, McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, other stud players. Irv Smith is an interesting guy. 6 targets in 3 of the last 4 games, getting a little work, and we know the Vikings are going to put up points. I'll say Minnesota's my favorite defense on the slate. I know they're a little pricier than I normally like to go, but in a game script that is perfect against Brendan Allen, I really think they'll have opportunities to do a lot of damage.
Okay. Fair enough. Where would you rank them?
What, Minnesota's defense?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're my favorite defense this week.
Okay.
It's a little pricier than I normally like, but again, I found myself not really struggling to price-wise this week. A lot of options.
Right. Yeah, I get it. And it just sounded from your tone like this was a team you really liked from a defensive standpoint. Do you guys want to hit on anything else? I mean, it's really hard to get to Denver here, a 15-point total. It's just not that friendly.
I'll throw out Cortland Sutton. He has been tremendous this year. I mean, his stats are off the charts. So he's caught 66% of his passes on average of 15.7 yards per catch. So, I mean, Brandon Allen's a little bit of a downgrade from Joe Flacco, but not a ton. And this is a guy that gets targeted a lot. So I think there's a lot of variance there in the outcomes. The price isn't ideal, but he's in pretty big contention in GPPs for me.
Okay. So I want to ask you guys both this before we move on. It's not specific to this game, but I think it's a really important question this week. Ben, you first. We talk about guys like Irv Smith. We'll get to a few other cheap tight ends. How willing are you to go dual tight end on DraftKings today, knowing that there's value at other positions? Is this something you're going to look to avoid, or if you end up with it, you're okay?
Well, it has to be the latter because I keep ending up with it. I didn't even intentionally prioritize to do that, but boy, oh boy, when you've got a mix of those reasonable price guys with Kittle out and some of these other things, I have a lot of that, and I'm pretty comfortable with it, to be honest.
I feel awful about it, honestly.
Well, there we go. And that's probably what'll happen. It opens up a lot, and these guys, I found so much value there rather than trying to get the Russell Gages of the world, multiple of them. That just seems very dangerous.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem with me is like, do these flex tight ends that I'm using have, the upside to get me where I need to go? What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think that if you're trying to cram in a lot of expensive guys by getting a tight end that's like 2,500 in the flex or something, it's not like the most optimal way to build a lineup. But I mean, if there aren't any cheap value plays at other positions, I guess it could work.
All right. We've got 5 to go. Let's do Washington, New York. Well, really 4 to go.
Yeah, serious.
Alex, Washington Redskins, New York Jets, sorry. lowest total on the slate, 38.5. Skins 2.5-point favorites, 20.5 total for them, 18 for the Jets. I'm just going to throw this over to you and let you run with it because outside of the news that Darius Geis is back, I don't really see a whole lot to get excited about here whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, this one might be a situation where you'd have to be able to turn water into wine to make this look like a good fantasy game.
Yep.
I think it is a little bit site specific though. Terry McLaurin has been having a great year. Dwayne Haskins isn't the best quarterback to throw to him, but he's only 5,500 on FanDuel, and that's a price that I'm going to be hammering this guy, I think. On the other side, Le'Veon Bell is kind of in the same category with Fournette as far as just having so much usage that from week to week he could have a huge game. He's expensive though, so he's a little bit tougher to fit in lineups. And finally, Jamison Crowder is someone that I kind of have in the back of my mind.
Ben?
Nah, waves. I really don't see much with Haskins. I think he'll be better than he's shown, but I'm not going to attack that. McLaurin, he was running so pure with touchdowns to begin with that it's hard. It's hard to say where does he go from here. He has to keep that up. And lately we've seen what happens when he doesn't. It's been bad. On the Jets side, they're a disaster. So I don't think you get burned by omitting some of these guys. And with so many other games having reasonable targets, I'm not even trying to decipher this.
Well, let me ask you this though: both teams, the DST, defense special teams, are actually discounted or cheap at least. And look, while neither of these are juggernaut defenses, the defense is not the reason the Jets and Redskins have been losing games this year, if you know what I mean. What do you make of them this week?
So you're right, but at the same time, I've seen time and time again, and I'm not saying you can really predict this, but you're only as good as what your offense gives you. And with these quarterbacks, when they fumble on the 10-yard line and then, your team is giving up points left and right, it's nothing you can really do. So they are cheap, but they're not that cheap, to be honest. I thought we might see them in the basement. So middling price tags, I tried to find the money to go get someone like the Vikings that I talked about.
So outside of the Vikings, where would you say your favorite defenses are then?
The Vikings, the Colts, or then I'd go try to go all the way down to like the Dolphins or something.
Even the Dolphins aren't that cheap. When you have the Lions are 1,800, Dolphins are 25.
Yeah, it's the world we live in. I don't know. What do you want me to say? It's not the easiest defense week for sure.
I hear you. Any interest in the defense this year, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. I think the Redskins defense is one of the top ones of the week. Darnold has been throwing picks at above average rate. New York's only projected to score about 18 points. And the Redskins are actually really, really cheap. They're one of the cheapest defenses. Or wait, they're
2,800.
2,800, yeah. So you're getting better than 3 points per dollar at that. That's pretty good for defense. On fantasy draft at 5,300, even cheaper. And FanDuel, I can't remember what the minimum is, but 4K seems like it's pretty cheap.
It does. Well, that's it for that one.
Yeah,
let's keep it moving. 4 to go. Before we do, though, Deeper Dive, one word. That's the sign-up code to get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus membership. Deeper Dive will get you 50% off your first month. You're talking ownership projections, top stack tool, so much more. Of course, the player projections, all of our premium articles that everyone spends hours laboring over each and every day. The lineup builder, of course, the Fantasy Cruncher add-on. And if sites have DFS contests, we've got content from NFL to NBA to MLB, NHL, PGA, NASCAR, soccer, MMA, and of course, sports betting, everything at awesemo.com. So here's what you do. If you go to awesemo.com/join, click on Start Membership. And upon doing so, we'll ask you a question. What type of player are you? Serious, season-long, advanced, professional, casual player? And if you click that and then you hit submit, we'll pull up recommended packages. So you're not getting too little, you're not getting too much, and whatever you're getting, you feel comfortable with it when you go ahead and make that commitment. And of course, if you're not ready to make much of a commitment at all and you just want to see what we offer, $3.95 will get you the week-long express package, $3.95 at awesomemode.com. One more thing. When you're at that awesomemode.com/join, scroll to the bottom past Alex's wonderful bio, and you'll see tutorial videos on how our favorite and most popular tools work, from the projections to ownership, even of course our premium Slack chat and more. So deeper dive, one word will get you 50% off your first month of Awesome Mode Plus subscription. All right, Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Ben, no Marshawn Lattimore, in my opinion, is huge. This is one of the biggest pieces of news all week that I think we've gotten. And right now, when you're looking at ownership, I am just very shocked. I was, and I still am shocked throughout the week, that Winston's coming in at 4% on DraftKings. You have Mike Evans, who at that price tag, I don't understand. 17% feels too low on Mike Evans, given his salary. Chris Godwin, 12%. They've come up, but they're still not that popular. And then another one here, I'm going to try and set you up, and you can take it wherever you'd like. O.J. Howard, 2.5%. Check this out. So O.J. Howard, through the first 5 weeks of the season, averaged 24 routes run per game. And then week 6, he played, of course, 7, 8, 9, he was out. And then week 10. If you take week 6 and week 10 and combine all the tight ends in the league that have played over that span, O.J. Howard leads the league in routes run. So just something that's worth discussing here. He was targeted 7 times last game. We had seen him completely uninvolved for a while, but now O.J. Howard actually getting involved in the red zone. We saw him get some opportunities last week, caught a touchdown, also had 3 red zone targets. As ugly and gross as it feels, I'm likely going back to some O.J. Howard here at a dirt cheap price point. I love Evans, Godwin, Winston. Tampa Bay with Marshawn Lattimore out is actually one of my favorite teams. Agree, disagree, somewhere in the middle? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with that. O.J. Howard's a guy I was able to get on, and it was not because I thought it was the Cardinals mostly, truth be told, but it worked out last week. And now I think some people are going to see that and jump on a bit, but this is a team not getting a ton of love at home against, Saints, and you mentioned Lattimore. That is huge.
Huge.
So we've got, we know that Jameis isn't shy about giving his guy shots. There's going to be plenty of targets to go around. I'm not going to mess around with Ronald Jones again. I think that was a one-hit wonder. Prices come up just a little bit. I'm not there. So I'm going to look to have some bucks. It's a team that certainly wasn't a priority coming into today, but the more I looked with the ownership and the leverage that you can get, very concentrated offense, in my opinion, it's an easy team to do. And then running it back is obviously one of the easiest with the weapons that the Saints have.
How about you, Alex?
I have been really high on Jameis all season because it's so easy to make a really highly correlated stack with Evans and Godwin, or one of the two. This is a little bit of a tougher game for the Bucs here. Pretty big underdog. New Orleans has been above average in defending the run and the pass. And the prices have come up a ton on these guys. They're among the highest priced guys on the slate. So at this point, I'm kind of looking to some other teams maybe that are better values, but using my top stacks tool, where I kind of give my predictions for what percentage each team will be the highest scoring stack of the week. The chance that Tampa Bay is the highest scoring is about double the ownership. So there is a lot of merit to that.
Yeah, that's where I think I just see it differently than you and a couple of other people, is more, or not a couple, most of the field, I guess, because of the ownership. But I feel like if I have Mike Evans and Godwin at 74 and 73 respectively, and then DeAndre Hopkins against Marlon Humphrey at 8,100, Michael Thomas at 9,900. These guys are, the best of the best. But Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Ben, the one thing I love about them is at this price, their ceilings are so high that it's not like Evans and Godwin don't have the same ceiling as Thomas and Hopkins.
No, the problem is there's 2 of them, which is really tough.
Right, but when you're throwing 40 times a game, and I'm not trying to convince anyone, I'm just giving you my thought process on it. When you're throwing 40 times a game, they're both top 3 in fantasy points this year at their position, top 4 in targets yards. Sorry, Evans leads the league in air yards. Godwin's top 15. While there are 2 of them, the offense is so heavily concentrated that I don't really care.
So you're comfortable pairing up Winston with both of them in the same lineup?
With Marshawn Lattimore out? Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Godwin was going to be my favorite play of the entire week if Lattimore played, just to give you an idea of where I'm at, because he has shut down Evans every time they've faced.
See, to me, it's funny, and then I'll pass it back to you guys. I certainly like the Bucs more with Lattimore out, but I think it's a harder situation to break down with Lattimore out because
correct. Godwin would have been the clear pivot, is what you're saying.
Clear pivot, exactly. Clear one-off. And now it's like, okay, man, you got 3 reasonable pass catchers when you include Howard. I kind of have to decipher my stacks, so that can be a little tricky. But there's no doubt that the Bucs are not getting the ownership that I think they maybe should, and they make an interesting tournament play.
All right, Alex, what about the other side of this one? New Orleans, tough team right now to know what's going on when it comes to the backfield. But, of course, Michael Thomas, the only 1,000-yard receiver this season through 10 weeks. Jared Cook saw double-digit targets last week, which is encouraging. And, by the way, let me just throw it out there again. I think O.J. Howard, his ownership is a tough matchup, but a very solid tournament option at a horrible position. But, yeah, Michael Thomas, Jared Cook, and then Alvin Kamara. Let's start with Alvin Kamara here and what you see happening this week now that his price tag has come down. Are you confident in him?
I'm pretty confident because last game, although they didn't run the ball much, Kamara was on the field much more than Latavius Murray, and his price has come down a lot. So he's kind of giving you a several $1,000 discount from a guy like Christian McCaffrey. We know Kamara has slate-breaking upside, and it's not too hard to imagine a game where Tampa Bay puts up some points and they're running Kamara out a ton. So I think if the general consensus is that maybe he's not the best play, that could be a good chance to be contrarian.
Okay. Ben, let me ask you this. This is my one concern with Alvin Kamara. And I've said it a lot throughout the week, but I think when you're talking about opportunities on the ground, I would not be that surprised if Murray and Kamara start to split more, especially if they're, winning games or competitive, because all of Kamara's work came in the second half in the passing game last week. But more so, does the matchup against the Tampa Bay team that has stifled opposing run games this season worry you that Kamara might become one-dimensional here, or is that not an issue?
No, to me, actually, it might be encouraging because Latavius Murray's dimension is going to get reduced more than Kamara. I actually like when they use him in the passing game. He needs the targets to get there more than he needs the carries. So in a game that it makes sense that if one of these running backs was going to be completely phased out, it would be Murray. So for me, Kamara, very interesting play. I want to be clear. Michael Thomas, the numbers speak for himself, but I'm coming in way underweight. That is my big stand on the slate. I can't get there with this price tag. So naturally, Kamara is a leverage within itself for me. I'm going to run it back with him on a lot of these Bucs stacks. Michael Thomas is great, and he should put up a very, very quality line. But like Christian McCaffrey, you just have to wonder how much salary are you burning there with the price tag that clearly got inflated.
What about the rest, though? Jared Cook and whoever else catches passes, nobody for this team.
Yeah, Cook is one of those value tight ends. He's a little more expensive, but he's another way you can get leverage against Michael Thomas and as a standalone if you want cheap exposure to the Saints offense.
Alex, what about the pass catchers for you? Of course, as Ben pointed out, he's taking a stand because that price tag is so high on Michael Thomas. Are you going to come in pretty heavy on Thomas this week?
Well, I think there's a lot of great expensive options, so I don't know if I'll be super heavy, but I think it's probably my top projected play of the week in PPR, just because he gets so many targets, catches most of them, averaging more than 100 yards per game, and the matchup is good versus Tampa Bay, so I'm seeing a lot of reasons to buy in here.
Okay. What about Cook and anybody else from this Saints team?
It's a little bit hard to find anyone that has enough value to really be in fantasy consideration, but Cook is kind of someone I might throw in a stack. Traquan Smith, if he was a little cheaper, I'd be interested, but he's actually a little bit expensive this week, which is kind of weird.
It is weird, and I don't really understand it all that much. Ben, anything else to close this game out? Again, another NFC South game, a whole lot to digest here.
No, yeah, it's a very good game to target. You have multiple plays on multiple sides of the game. We'll see how the Saints respond. They're outdoors and coming off a bad loss. Definitely some value on it. It's just prioritizing your pay up. I mean, that's what this slate is about, in my opinion. It's prioritizing who do you want to pay up for across the slate.
Okay. San Francisco, Arizona. Alex, so we've got no George Kittle, and we have Emmanuel Sanders active, but I had some concern. I mean, he was questionable. He's going to play. Then he said he was going to try to play. He didn't practice at all this week. So that, to me, is a little bit concerning. Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, clearly had his most productive week of the year, especially in terms of opportunities with 11 targets, 8 for 112 through the air. And a big thing that stood out to me is Ross Dwelly had 7 targets and actually ran some of the most routes of any tight end. Get this, the guys that ran more routes than Ross Dwelly in week 10, Travis Kelce and Greg Olsen. That's it. Then it was Dwelly and then Howard. So a very interesting spot for San Francisco. Again, a bad tight end position. I can't say I have much faith in Dwelly, but he was involved. And then, of course, Matt Breida out for this game. Talk to me about, or at least not in line. I don't know if he's officially out. Before we get to Arizona and that mess of a backfield, what are you doing with Tevin Coleman and Dwelly and Deebo Samuel in this passing attack for the San Francisco Niners?
I think Tevin Coleman's pretty interesting with Breida out. That kind of solidifies his role as the preferred back. Of course, Mostert and Wilson will soak up a lot of Breida's usage.
Do we know if Mostert is playing yet?
I just see questionable from what I've seen.
Yeah, and it's a 4 p.m. game at work because I actually don't think he's the craziest play in tournaments on a team that runs 40 times per game. Go ahead, though.
That's a good point. Yeah, he's only 3,400. So Mostert could be a pretty sneaky play. If he's out, you can pivot to Jeff Wilson at the same price, and
that's a great point.
Yeah, you're not losing anything there. So I think that's a really interesting kind of play there. I think both of those guys can make nice GPP plays because San Francisco just in a matchup where they're favored, they've just shown a tendency to run the ball like a zillion times.
Okay, Ben, San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, Dwelly's someone we know. They resurrected OJ Howard, so another cheap tight end that you can go to against this Cardinals defense who's been atrocious. Deebo Samuel, yeah, we saw the targets there in that wild game against Seattle, but this is a Niners team, as you mentioned, they want to run the ball more often than not. Coleman, I don't know. I'm going to be very interested to see, how different his role looks because they do have a ton of backs. Will other guys just slide in and everyone moves up one, or will he take on more of a workhorse backfield? Because outside of his, that game against Carolina, of course, where he had 40 points, he's been okay, but it hasn't been fantastic production. Now, they are a heavy favorite at home, and they should lean on the ground game. But this is a Niners team overall that I'm not too high on. I think the tight end makes the most obvious cheap play.
Okay. Yeah, I actually feel like this could be one of these games where it flies under the radar, at least on the San Francisco side. The problem I have been is running it back. Of course, now we know Kingsbury's saying Johnson's probably going to play a backup role for now. He wants to see what Drake can do because he's been explosive. Looks like he'll get the bulk of opportunities, or at least the better half of them. Chase Edmonds is out, but then you've got guys like Kirk coming off not only his first touchdown game, but first 3 touchdowns of the season. Larry Fitzgerald has been very quiet lately, despite his 8-catch game last week. I mean, the San Francisco defense has been spectacular, so I don't know how much I love Arizona at all.
Yeah, I'm not too high on them. Kyler, if you really want to be dangerous, he's not going to be popular, of course, but the rushing upside just not what I thought it would be. And until that changes, it's hard to get there. Probably not going to chase Kirk. And even though Kingsbury has stated that Drake sees the lion's share, I'm not, this is a guy that has been a little cagey with what exactly these running back roles are.
No question. Do you want to talk about anything else for this team?
No.
Okay. How about you, Alex?
I'm not really high on the Cardinals at all. Not really cheap enough for a tough matchup for San Francisco, one of the best pass defenses in the league. But I am a little bit interested in this $1,500 defense of the Cardinals on DraftKings. I mean,
interesting.
That's lower than they usually go by a lot. And when you break it down in points per dollar, like that's pretty good. And it helps you get in some of those studs.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, would you rather play a $2,500 tight end in your flex, or would you rather play a $1,500 defense and get you up to maybe a better player in that flex spot? One way to look at it. But yeah, they're so cheap that, hey, listen, man, Laz gets fit, Ben. This dude playing a cheap defense against the stack and winning $300,000 last week.
Yeah. I mean, what can you say? A lot of strategies out there. That's one of them. I'll say that much. But
I found him, by the way. He found me.
There he is. We
might have a surprise coming up down the road. Exciting stuff.
Man of mystery. Congrats to him, though. That is very cool. And yeah, cheap defense out. It's a great point by Alex. It really opens up the rest of your lineups to get permutations that you just can't get.
For sure. Alex, anything else on either side?
I'm good.
Okay. Let's go to Cincinnati and Oakland. All right, Ben. We've got the Oakland Raiders, who have, it is amazing, by the way, who have scored 26. This is over their last 6 weeks, right? 31, 24, 24, 24, 31, 26. That's the Oakland Raiders. Yes. Not any other team, but the Oakland Raiders. And now, heading into this week, well, I guess it should surprise nobody that they have the highest total on the slate. They're sitting at 29.75 against their ravaged and awful Bengals team. Josh Jacobs, one of my favorite plays of the week. I've even considered having some Jacobs-Waller lineups without Derek Carr, but there's Tyrell Williams. We can even talk Hunter Renfrow. Fire away, man. What do you have for this Oakland squad? 11.5-point favorites, 48 over-under.
Yeah, they are credit to John Gruden. They look good. They're in, I don't want to say the driver's seat, but you get this, they're in the playoff hunt for easily, and it's a great spot for all their fantasy players. You've got Josh Jacobs, should be the offensive rookie of the year. He's been fantastic. He's getting the work and a perfect game script here. You've got Waller. We know if you want to spend up at tight end, he's probably the place to go. Tyrell Williams is the one who I'm kind of the most confused on. He had that string of touchdowns, didn't have one, and the targets have not been great, but there's no doubt he's a home run threat. And in a situation where Oakland across the board is in a great spot, that can be one way to get some exposure to them. So it's a team that I'm not really stacking. I don't have a ton of Carr, but at the same time, I feel very comfortable with all their main weapons.
Okay. Top plays from this side for you?
I think nothing too fancy. Jacob and Waller.
Okay. What about you, Alex? Oakland Raiders, big time favorites.
I think Jacobs is going to be one of the best running back plays of the week just because gives you a pretty big discount from some of the other guys. On FanDuel, he's a little bit more expensive, and on Yahoo, he's actually quite expensive. So a little bit site-specific, but on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, core play for me. Darren Waller is also someone I'm pretty interested in. He stands out as one of the best tight ends left that's healthy. Of course, been on a little bit of a cold streak, but I'm not thinking this guy is going to go off every week, just that there's a good chance of it. Cincinnati is pretty interesting because they ran Mixon 30 times in a blowout loss. So that kind of shows that if maybe Mixon is in play, it's not a stretch that game script could happen again. And if they're just killing clock by running Mixon, I mean, I don't garbage time points count just as much as regular points. I'll take it.
Yeah, that was really one of the stranger things you're going to see. 30 carries in a game where you lose by 36 points. You just don't see that very often, Ben.
No, you don't. But Mixon, he needs every carry he can get to try to get over 100 yards with the way this line blocks. And you have him and you have Tyler Boyd at very reasonable price tags. This Oakland defense, more in the secondary, pretty banged up at this point, and just not a unit that I respect. But at the same time, Ryan Finley is a guy that it's clearly a work in progress. He was not great last week. And it remains to be seen, but there's no doubt that in garbage time, there's going to be opportunities for these Bengals, and I'm not shying away from guys like Mixon or Boyd.
Are you shying away from Finley?
Yes, I'm so far away from him that I don't have interest in chasing that.
Now, what about you, Alex? Any interest in the Finmeister?
I'll take some shots because the points per dollar on all these guys is pretty good. He's low owned and some good spend up options this week. So I think it makes a nice pivot from spending down at running back.
It very much pains me to say this, but I will probably have a little bit of Ryan Finley. And it certainly won't work out. But, hey, we'll do it anyway. The Cincinnati side that we talked about, Mixon, I just want to touch on this one more time before we move to the next game and close this out, Alex. What are your thoughts on some of these value guys, like a little bit more in depth when it comes to guys like Boyd and Auden Tate and Alex Erickson? Like, do you see value there outside of just Joe Mixon?
Yeah, I think certainly those guys make nice value plays as one-offs as well. Tate and Boyd would be my preferred options just because they're on the field a little bit more. But certainly all of them are good.
Yeah, I like them too. It feels pretty awful, but look, Oakland's pass defense is very bad. Yeah. Let's not ignore that. While they're scoring a lot of points each week, they still allowed 24, 24, 27, 42, 21, 24, 34, 28. Like, those are bad numbers defensively. Will this game be a shootout? I can't imagine. But in the event that it is a blowout, Finley's going to have at least an easier time passing today than he would against Marlon Humphrey and Smith and Marcus Peters. So something to keep in mind. All right, let's finish it out here. Last thing to hit you guys with before we do is we've got a bit of a giveaway today. Nothing crazy, don't worry. But we're giving away a main slate giveaway, a free 2019 NFL Awesemo Plus season pass. Still plenty of time left to go this season. All you got to do is guess the stack that scores the most points on today's 11-game main slate. Like the tweet, retweet it, and reply with your answer at Awesemo_com and Awesemo NFL. That'll get you entered. All you got to do, like, retweet, and reply with your answer. Respond to at Awesemo_com or at Awesemo NFL. Follow both of them and follow all three of us while you're at it. You won't regret it. So guess the stack that scores the most points on today's slate and win a free NFL Awesemo Plus pass. We'll do a random drawing after we get all of the entrants. Okay. So one more to go. New England, Philadelphia. Alex, this is a spot where the Eagles really don't have many weapons whatsoever, which is one of the reasons why Miles Sanders, of course, is going to see his ownership increase exponentially from what it was earlier in the week. He's at 13.7% on DraftKings. Outside of that, though, you have no Jordan Howard, who I really liked if he was going to play, no Alshon Jeffrey, which leaves you with Mac Hollins, Nelson Aguilar, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Jordan Matthews, and then Zach Ertz and Goddard. But teams have done a phenomenal job of taking Ertz out of the game. What are your thoughts here on the Philadelphia Eagles at home against a Patriots team that is really quite good? 20-point implied total for the Eagles here. They're 4.5-point dogs in a 44.5-point total game.
I mean, it's hard to feel confident with any Eagles players, in my opinion, because of this matchup versus New England. This 20-point team total is it's actually a little bit higher than I would have guessed. But I think the guy to talk about is Miles Sanders, like you brought up. Just Jordan Howard being out. A lot of people are expecting kind of those rushing attempts to flow to Miles Sanders. I'm much more skeptical about this. I think them signing Jay Ajayi, who played with the team last year and should be ready to go right from the blocks. I think he's going to be a factor in this game. And also Boston Scott is someone that they've leaned on to rush the ball when other guys have been out. So I think Miles Sanders, I guess my bold prediction is Miles Sanders' role in the rushing attack will remain pretty much the same. and he'll pick up a few more routes because Darren Sproles is out. But overall, it's not moving the needle a ton for me. But are you guys a little bit more optimistic about it?
I think he's going to have a lot more involvement than he normally would. But I'm with you in that I don't think it just becomes a smash spot either. What about you, Ben?
No, I'm not there either. And part of it's because there's so many other options that I'm not really forced to try to infer what the Eagles are going to do with Ajayi and these other guys in a weird matchup. I'm not super high on the Eagles overall, so I'm going to let other people do that. It's not to say Sanders won't have some chances to be effective, but not a core play by any stretch for me.
Okay. Anybody in this game anyone from the Eagles stand out to you, Ben?
No, not really, because time and time again, we've seen, you mentioned this already, Ertz at these reasonable price tags, these teams can take him away very easily. And it seems that Wentz is almost content letting people bracket him and going to Goddard and some of his other weapons. So it's very hard to trust Ertz if the targets aren't going to be there. For
sure. What about, Ben, on the opposite side, New England? You've got Sanu. You have James White, if you like. The problem I have with James White is, I know we talk about him all the time, but what's the range of outcomes for James White? It feels like he's a 10 to 15 fantasy point guy pretty much every week. And then you've got Edelman here. No surprise again, though, that this is a Patriots team that has a high total on the slate. Not as high as I thought. I'm surprised it's 24.5. I really thought it'd be higher than that, but they're on the road, 4.5 point favorites. What stands out from the Pats?
Not a ton. You mentioned White is very reliable, but he also hasn't shown any variance. That can change a bit, but it doesn't scream tournament winning upside. I will say they make pretty safe plays, in a cash environment. Someone like Edelman, his short underneath routes, gets the targets, should have an effective game. I'm not, I think like Dorsett or Sanu, interesting a little over the top just with the Eagles secondary. But those are clearly just tournament plays, whereas Edelman and White, I think you could get to in a cash setting.
Okay. How about you, Alex?
This game really doesn't stand out a ton. In the full slate, on the afternoon slate, I think I'll have some White. Edelman, I think, is a pretty good play, but overshadowed by some other wide receivers on the slate. But I think I'll have some of him. Sanu's a little bit overpriced, so I'm not getting there. And the guy I'm really pulling for today is N'Keal Harry. They announced he's going to be playing his first game, and I have him a bunch in best ball, so I'm desperate for some production there.
Okay. Well, maybe you'll get it. No guarantees. All right, so that'll do it for us. Not bad. We actually, boys, we hit the mark. This is exactly what we were this is exactly where we were looking to come in at. So good work to us. You've got Eric and Sam taking you up to Live Before Lock with the Inactives report coming up immediately after us. And then Josh Engelman, Chris Spags with Live Before Lock bringing you to that 1 p.m. kickoff for the early slate of games. As always, it's been fun. If you enjoy the show, you want to help support us, hit that thumbs up button. It does much for us, and it'll bring you good luck today, I've heard. Subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. As we do every week, Ben, hot take. What do you got?
Hot take. I'm going to say...
You always have something. Come on,
I know, but most of my takes, I'm in like college basketball mode, a lot of other things going on. I'm going to go to a hot take. It's off the slate, but I think the Bears basically end the Rams season tonight by winning in LA.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
That would be incredible. What about you, Alex?
I can't claim to have a take that hot, but I'm going to say that Kalen Ballage outscores Miles Sanders today.
All right. Miami Dolphins win their third straight, baby.
That's hot.
Win outright over the Buffalo Bills again in front of at least 15 people. We'll see you back here next time on the Deeper Dive presented by FantasyDraft.com.
Go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for tuning in. This is Live Before Locks, Week 11 version, injuries and inactives, leading you for the next 30 minutes with my man Sam Smith. Sam, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for covering for me while I was out.
Yeah, Sam, you weren't just out, brother. Tell everybody what you were doing.
I got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
I don't know if it's early congratulations or early death sentence. It just depends on
time will tell, yeah.
on who you're talking to. Anyways, we got a lot to get into, just like always, leading up here for the next 30 minutes, Live Before Lock, injuries and inactives. Hey, this is the NFL. There's a ton of injuries to get to for every game. There always is. We're going to be getting some stuff as we get through the show today. Any live tweets, things coming in from folks like Schefter or Mort. We'll be bringing those to you guys, but not just the basic inactives, the running backs, the wide receivers. My man Sam Smith, he has that insight on the left guard, the starting defensive end, all those unique inactives that really will play a huge role in lineups for today. Before we get into any of the details, though, do you want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for today's show? Is sponsored by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, home of the $200,000 NFL baller, kicking off this Sunday, and the $30,000 NBA baller tonight. 5K goes the first, not too shabby. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports now include upload and edit features for those looking to play multiple lineups. Claim up to $30 in Yahoo Sports refund money. Yahoo Sports reward points by signing up and using promo code AWESOMO today. So that's claim up to $30 in Yahoo Sports reward points by promo code AWESOMO. $30. Why not do it, right? Use the link that is featured in the article that we are dropping into the chat here in the next couple minutes. Make better choices. Choose Yahoo Daily Fantasy. And that's it for our sponsor today. Sam, before we get into it, anything that you want to anything that kind of stands out to you today before we get into kind of game by game, anything that you're paying attention to as we lead up to kickoff here?
Just all over the league, there's a ton of like top receivers, top running backs who are out, confirmed already. And, there's a lot of just general thinness around the entire league that we're kind of have to do some crap shooting this week as we look to replace that production.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we? We'll start with the afternoon slate, or the early slate, I guess you said, the 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. Starting off, first game of the day is the Atlanta Falcons going on the road in Carolina. A variety of inactives for that one. We'll start with Atlanta. The one that I think most people are probably aware of is the Devontae Freeman. He's out with the foot injury. You got Kamal Ishmael out with a concussion, their starting safety. And then tight end Austin Hooper out with the knee. On the Panthers side of the ball, quarterback Ross Cockrell is out with a quad. Doubtful, we got their starting guard, Dennis Daly, and Dante Jackson with a hip. Any injuries that stand out to you on either side of the ball there?
Atlanta just posted their inactives. The only other semi-notable one, I guess, would be defensive end John Kaminsky. He's a third-string defensive end, but he plays a bit and he does some productive things. But yeah, Freeman's obviously the big one, which has made Brian Hill big-time chalk this week. Austin Hooper is he's sort of the new breakout tight end since Will Dissly went down, and they're going to have to replace that somewhere. Looking at Atlanta's tight ends, you're not really thinking much of Jaden Graham or Luke Stocker. It seems like the guy people are going to more to replace that production is Russell Gage. So he's kind of the guy who's got a big uptick in ownership this week. With Carolina, the Ross Cockrell injury is probably the one I'm most curious about seeing what it does for Atlanta. He's a starting corner. When you lose a starting corner, that's going to do a lot likely for Calvin Ridley, because I would assume Bradbury is going to be sticking with Julio Jones quite a bit. So that's what I'm mostly seeing. There's not a lot to work with up front as far as injuries. They're both pretty healthy in that regard. Carolina's a pretty bad run defense, so that's hence why Brian Hill is so chalked this week.
Yeah, I think it's helpful. Atlanta had that late bye. It's always helpful when you have that to get kind of healthy late in the year. You see some of those teams that have those like week 5 buys, and while certainly can be banged up by that point, there's probably I'll look through the stats as far as how late season buys benefit teams getting healthy and getting right. We saw Atlanta with a great win against New Orleans last week. Moving right along, we're going to the AFC East for the next one, down to Miami. Buffalo heading out to take on the Dolphins. Buffalo team relatively healthy. Only questionable tag I saw was Jerry Hughes with the groin. On the Dolphins side of the ball, a few more injuries report. Cornerback Ken Webster out with an ankle. Questionable, we got Taco Charlton with an elbow. Safety Rashad Jones, linebacker Raekwon McMillan, and defensive end Avery Moss with an ankle. Any other anything that stands out to you out of those lists there? Otherwise, I think pretty straightforward for us.
Yeah, both just posted their inactives, and Buffalo is very healthy. They're not going to be missing really any starters at all. Without TJ Yeldon, who's third-string running back, and several backup linemen, but they're coming to this game pretty good. Jerry Hughes is cleared to play, so he will be out there. As for Dolphins, it's a little bit of a different story. 2 corners they will be without Xavier Crawford and Ken Webster. Raekwon McMillan is also out, and Taco Charlton is out. But as far as starters, both teams are looking pretty good. I like Buffalo was my stack I was rolling with this week, and with Miami missing some corners, I'm going to be looking pretty hard at Josh Allen, John Brown specifically, maybe some Cole Beasley there as well.
Yeah, no, it's again not too many injuries report in that game. It's just kind of interesting game to game to see where teams are a little bit more banged up, and we'll get to some of those here in just a minute. Before we get too much further along the road, I do want to give a quick mention to our NFL main slate giveaway today. For those of you tuning in, have a chance to win a free 2019 NFL Awesemo Plus Season Pass. Guess the stack that scores the most points on today's 11-game main slate. What you need to do is like, retweet, and reply with your answer, and follow at Awesemo_com and at Awesemo NFL to be entered. Again, huge opportunity today. 2019 free NFL Awesemo Season Pass in the main slate giveaway. Like, retweet, reply at Awesemo_com at Awesemo NFL to be entered. Guess the biggest, the largest, the stack that's like, who's the biggest today? Who's going high? And a cool giveaway. So make sure you guys get a chance to win that today. You want to miss out. Jumping back into the action in today's games, we'll keep it in the AFC. Cincinnati going to Oakland to take on the Raiders. A few more injuries to report here. On the Bengals side of the ball, A.J. Green's still out. Wondering if he ever is going to come back with that ankle. Quarterback Dre Kirkpatrick, the guard Alex Redmond, tight end Drew Sample, not a whole lot there. On the questionable side, Geno Atkins, and then their tackle Bobby Hart with the shoulder. Raiders side of the ball, we got out confirmed safety LaMarcus Joyner with a hammy. Tackle David Sharp with the calf, and then questionable Trent Brown and Dwayne Harris with a foot. Anything else that you're seeing coming out of that game, Sam?
I did see Geno Atkins is expected to play as of this time. That's really the only confirmation we got either way for all these other guys. With Cincinnati, with both sides of the lines there, you're looking to exploit them on both sides of the ball. They have one of the worst offensive lines and one of the worst defensive lines in all of football, even with Geno Atkins playing. So that's always exploitable. With the Raiders, LaMarcus Joyner was a guy I was targeting anyway if he was going to play. And now that he's out, I'm looking pretty much stronger at Tyler Boyd, who primarily plays slot. LaMarcus Joyner primarily is slot corner. So that's where I'm looking at big with this game. From what I can see, it seems like Trent Brown's going to play, but I haven't seen full confirmation either way for Oakland there.
Yeah, no, good insight there, Sam. Appreciate it. And that's the type of stuff we want to give you guys on this show, right? You can tune in anywhere and get the main inactives, what running backs out, what wide receivers out. But there's more to it than that. It plays such a big role in games and what you need to be thinking about when putting together your lineups for the day. Moving right along, jumping back into the NFC, the Dallas Cowboys going on the road to Detroit, taking on the Lions. We got the backup quarterback situation there. Matt Stafford ruled out earlier this week with the hip and a back for his second straight week. Also on the Lions side of the ball out is Deshaun Hand with an ankle. No hand injury there. Tackle Rick Wagner with a concussion. Questionable. We got DT, Damon Harrison, the running back Ty Johnson with a concussion. I don't know if we did hear if he's going to play or not. Punter Sam Martin, interestingly enough. Defensive end Romeo Okwara and safety Tracy Walker. On the Cowboys side, we got out. Just one confirmed that I saw was Connor Williams with the knee, their guard. On the questionable side, it's the tackle La'el Collins, and then safety Jeff Heath with double shoulder injuries. Interesting. I thought that was kind of interesting to see. Besides the Stafford injury, anything else jumping out to you?
Can confirm La'el Collins is going to play, which is huge. He's been one of the best right tackles in football this year. Jeff Heath is out, starting safety. He is not going to play. And then you said Connor Williams. So the Cowboys kind of supplementing missing their left guard with having their star right tackle. So I'm feeling pretty good about what they got on the line. Lions are looking pretty good defensive line-wise. Snacks Harrison is going to play. The only big loss they have, obviously, is Stafford out for another week. It sounds like the doctors told him a 6-week injury. They're hoping he'll be back before that. Other than that, Rick Wagner, starting right tackle, is out. So that's a guy who likely would have gone up a lot against DeMarcus Lawrence. So that will be an interesting matchup to watch. Other than that, they're looking pretty healthy as far as starters go.
Yeah, I mean,
and Ty Johnson confirming he's cleared concussion protocol and he is playing. You mentioned
there you go. He's gonna play. There you go. They've struggled to run the ball since Kerryon Johnson has been injured. Detroit struggled to run the ball. Then you throw in the backup QB situation. One thing I got to say, I think Alex Osimo tweeted this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or last week maybe, when Stafford was trying to play. Like, Stafford's like, this guy will play through a broken back. I swear, if as long as his leg's attached, he's going to try to play, right?
Right.
And then you got the load management stuff going on in the NBA where guys are just like unwilling to play because they need the rest, right? And yet, guys, I get it. It's one game a week. It's a little bit different. But God, that guy's a tough son of a gun.
Yeah.
I wish the Bears had a player like that.
Hey, Trubisky's tough, man. It's one thing he's
got. He's playing through an injury. I can't take away his toughness. I will not say that.
Never question his toughness.
No. Ability to throw a 10-yard hook route, maybe. Anyways, moving right along, we're going to keep it going. Denver on the road in Minnesota. A few injuries report here. We'll start with the host, Minnesota. Out safety Anthony Harris with the groin, defensive tackle Linval Joseph. And then their offensive guard, Josh Klein. Thielen also out with a hamstring another week. Questionable is safety Andrew Sendejo. I hope I said that correctly. On the Broncos side of the ball, we got Bryce Callahan. He's out with the foot. Doubtful was Jeff Hoyerman, their tight end there. And then offensive tackle Juwan James. Questionable Deshaun Hamilton, the wide receiver. Anything else popping up for that Minnesota Denver game?
To confirm some, confirm some of the questionables, Sendejo is going to play, which is, Anthony Harris, arguably been the Vikings' best defensive back this year. He's out, and they just picked up Andrew Sendejo, who played for them for a while. Then he went to the Eagles. He's back now. So they can just kind of plug him in place of Harris. So that's pretty big for them. I think Linval Joseph could be a pretty big loss for them. You could see, big 6'5", 340-pound defensive tackle. You could see the Broncos looking to kind of hammer that run game a little bit more with him out. Obviously, Vikings receiver situation is going to be fascinating today with Thielen out. Chances are you'll probably see Diggs. You'll obviously see a lot of Olabisi Johnson will probably be number 2. And then Josh Doxson, former first-round pick that they got from Washington after Washington cut him, is going to be active today. So we'll see if they incorporate him into the game at all. As for Denver, Deshaun Hamilton is in. He is active today. Jeff Hoyerman is out, so you might see another big Noah Fant day. And Juwan James is out again, right tackle. So good amount of injuries on both sides that are creating a little bit of havoc here, but we can work with it.
We can work with it. And make sure you jump into awesemo.com as you're hearing about these updates. If you got questions, looking at projections, ownership, jump to Awesemo. A lot of great content there coming up live to the minute on a lot of these things. And there's a little update there on inactives and some things to consider as well. Moving right along, we are about halfway through our slate here for today. Houston on the road in Baltimore. This is a game that I think a lot of people will have their eyes on. A lot of people will be watching. The fantasy world will certainly be tuning in. From an inactives side, we'll start with the Texans, the visitors. Will Fuller, he is still out, the Golden Domer. Bradley Roby, cornerback, hamstring is also out, questionable. Deshaun Gibson, their safety, and then offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil with his shoulder. Have we got any update on Tunsil?
Tunsil is good to go. He's going to play.
There he is. Big acquisition for them this year. I'm sure they're happy to have him in the lineup. Deshaun Watson certainly is happy to have him in the lineup. Ravens, doubtful. We got Michael Pierce with an ankle. Questionable Marquise Hollywood Brown with an ankle and a thigh. And then Chris Moore. Is Hollywood playing today?
Hollywood is good to go. He's playing.
There it is. Fire him up if you like him. Anything else standing out to you, whether it be on the Houston or the Baltimore side of the ball?
Houston, you mentioned Fuller and Roby. Another name they just picked up, Vernon Hargraves, the struggling safety, was with the Buccaneers. He is inactive today, though. Then with Baltimore, Michael Pierce is confirmed out, big run-stuffing defensive tackle. So that's pretty big for them. He's been their best defensive lineman for the last couple of years, so that'd be a big loss. Other than that, Baltimore's looking pretty healthy. Houston, loss of Fuller, obviously that opens up some Kenny Stills, what have you. But their cornerback situation is a little worrisome as usual. You might see with Hollywood playing if Lamar Jackson looks to target that downfield a little bit this week.
Yeah, it's something to pay attention to. Stills has been someone that it's so hard to guess when Kenny Stills is going to have that 40 reception. He always has a couple of those games, right? It's hard to pick when it's going to happen. But in a day like where he's going to be on the field a little bit more, those are the types of days that, if nothing else, the odds are a little bit more in your favor, right?
Right, of course.
So we're going to keep it in the AFC here, the AFC South. Jags, the return of Nick Foles.
Yeah.
In Indianapolis. So we know Foles is back today. Only other injury, the report was tight end Seth DeValve.
Seth DeValve is the backup tight end, but hasn't really provide much. They're looking at rookie Josh Oliver a lot more. So that's not a real impactful injury. They're healthy other than that.
Yeah, on the Colts side of the ball, a couple more injuries report. I guess first to note that Jacoby Brissett is playing this week, if you didn't know that already. Out, we do have Paris Campbell with the hand. T.Y. Hilton, he's still out with that calf injury. Doubtful was cornerback Pierre Desir with the hammy. And then Jordan Wilkins, the running back position, was questionable with an ankle. Do we get confirmation if he's going to play?
Jordan Wilkins is out. Pierre Desir also out. So Colts have decent corner depth. So it'll be Rocky Sin, Kenny Moore on the outside, more unlikely. Receiver is much bigger issue with them with no Hilton, no Campbell again. It'll probably Zach Pascal's the guy to look at. And then Chester Rogers. I believe they waived Deion Kane this week. So I don't think he's in play anymore. So it'll be interesting to see who they run out there as their third receiver. With Jordan Wilkins, it's always he has productive games because they do kind of go by committee, but most of the time you're looking at Marlon Mack out of that backfield. And up front, they're looking healthy, so I'm not real worried about what they're doing on either side of the ball as far as the lines go.
All right. Well, we got about 10 minutes here until the next show. So I want to get through these last 4 games, get into the afternoon. We got New Orleans on the road in Tampa. Should be a good game. I think it'll be an exciting game to watch. New Orleans likely want to get some revenge after their loss to Atlanta. Saints out. Wide receiver, kick returner Deontay Harris. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore is out with a hammy. And then guard Andrew Pete with the forearm. Buccaneers, out. We got outside linebacker Carl Nassib with the groin. Outside linebacker Anthony Nelson with the hammy. Cornerback MJ Stewart. And then on the questionable tag, they had their other corner, Carlton Davis with a hip. Anything stand out to you? Lattimore, the obvious one there for New Orleans, but anything else standing out to you as far as inactives?
Andres Pete a little bit just because he's a starting guard, but the Saints have done very well on both pass protecting and running the ball, and he's probably their worst lineman, so I'm not too concerned about that. Lattimore's the big one. PJ Williams, who's the Saints slot corner, was kind of my target this week for the Buccaneers to go against. If Lattimore played, then I'd be looking at Chris Godwin in the slot. If he didn't, then I'd be looking at Mike Evans on the outside. So I'm very much looking at Mike Evans working against PJ Williams this week. And then Buccaneers, there's no surprises as far as questionables who are out. Carlton Davis is active, but he's not a huge difference maker. Nassib, Nelson, Stewart, all out. So, yeah, nothing too surprising here. Everything we kind of knew beforehand.
Yep. Again, nothing, as you mentioned, nothing, no news flashes coming out of that game. The next one, I think it's our longest list of inactives for.
Well, they had a lot of questionables, but their actual inactive list release is only 7 names deep. So for the Jets,
that's not too bad. The Jets going on the road to take on Washington in the nation's capital. Out for New York, safety Matthias Farley with the quad, center Ryan Khalil with the knee there, C.J. Mosley, Paul Warlow, and it was also out with the quad. On the doubtful tag, they had cornerback Darrell Roberts, and then a long list of questionables. So I'll list these off, and then Sam, you let us know what you're hearing up to the minute here. Questionable leading up to today was Henry Anderson, their defensive end.
He's going.
We got Kelvin Bershom with an ankle.
He's playing.
Le'Veon Bell, he was
good to go.
He's good. He was sick earlier in the week. Linebacker Brandon Copeland with a hip and a thumb.
Good to go.
There you go. Neville Hewitt, linebacker.
Good to go.
Alex Lewis with the elbow.
Good to go.
I love it. Keep it going. Steve McClendon, defensive tackle with a neck.
He's good.
And Demaryius Thomas.
All questionables, good to go.
So all those questionable tags basically meant nothing.
Right. It's a lot of bluster.
You got to love the NFL's requirements around injury reporting. Is it Tom Brady that was questionable for like 4 straight years or something like that with a shoulder?
Well, yeah, he's in his clinic all the time, so they got to report it.
There you go. On the Redskins side of the ball, tight end Vernon Davis, he's out with a concussion. Wide receiver Paul Richardson with the hammy. Defensive tackle Tim Settle, and then Chris Thompson also still out. Questionable DeShazer Everett, and then Monte Nicholson. Anything jumping out to you on either side of the ball?
Everett is out. Nicholson's good to go. The big one, Thompson still being out. With Adrian Pearson, Darius Geis, it's kind of something to look at. Tim Settle is a rotational defensive tackle, pretty good run stopper, but not hugely impactful. And then Paul Richardson being out just keeps things kind of thin for Washington at receiver. So, it makes you look more at McLaurin, but Jets, they're bad. Washington's bad. It's not going to be fun to watch, but you could probably pick something out here for DFS that could help you. And I'd probably start with McLaurin, and maybe Bell, and wouldn't go much further than that, to be honest.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left here, so let's get through these last couple of games. NFC West and the afternoon slate. We got Arizona heading out to San Francisco. Out for the Cardinals, defensive end Zach Allen, cornerback Tremon Brock, running back Chase Edmonds out, outside linebacker Brooks Reed. Questionable tag, we had Justin Murray, Terrell Suggs, and Deontay Thompson. For the Niners, out was DJ Jones. Joe Staley is out with a finger. Linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair with the concussion. And then doubtful was Breda. Robbie Gould was doubtful. George Kittle, doubtful. Questionable, Raheem Mostert. Dante Pettis, Emmanuel Sanders, and Ahilo Witherspoon. So that late game in the quick turnaround, we got a banged-up San Francisco team. Cardinals with a few injuries themselves. Any last-minute news report on either side of the ball, Sam, for us?
Because afternoon game, there's not a lot of confirmation, but it sounds like Sanders is going to play, and that Bredo's confirmed out. Was Bredo confirmed out, or was he doubtful? He's out regardless, and Kittle is also not going to play.
Yep.
Chase Edmonds, you mentioned. Staley, you mentioned. With Mostert and Pettis, I haven't heard for sure, but it sounds like both are going to play. Pettis probably doesn't factor in. He's kind of in the doghouse there. I lean much more towards Deebo Samuel. And then with Jonathan Bullard, he's probably Arizona's best run stopper. So that's, and San Francisco's a pretty good running team. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, guys, a lot of moving pieces there, especially for San Francisco with the again late game and the quick turnaround here. I guess lucky for them they're playing Arizona, but anything can happen in one week. We got a few minutes left, so might as well jump into the Super Bowl from 2 years ago, the
rematch, yeah,
England on the road in Philadelphia. I know we got a good Philly crew with Awesemo. So Patriots out, Patrick Chung, Damian Harris, questionable tags. They had Nate Ebner, tight end Matt Lacoste, wide receiver Gunnar Olszewski, and defensive tackle Danny Shelton. Also defensive end John Simon, don't want to forget that one. Out for the Eagles, Nigel Bradham. Alshon Jeffrey is out. Darren Sproles, I think most people did see, is out. And then questionable, but I believe we do have confirmation, Jordan Howard will not play today.
He's out, yeah.
I know Alex and the folks before us were talking about this game and this injury in specific and what that meant for the Philadelphia running backs. But beyond that, any other thing to report, anything that stands out to you on either side of the ball?
With the Eagles running backs, you said Howard's out, and with Sproles also being out, that points a bit towards Miles Sanders, but they did just bring Jay Ajayi back, so he might be kind of their more ground back this week a little bit more, and then Sanders factors more in the passing game. Alshon Jeffrey being out and Sean Jackson at IR, their entire receiving core is pretty much dead in the water, which I would guess kind of that Stephon Gilmore then shadow Zach Ertz. You don't see that a lot with the corner shadowing a tight end, which might funnel a lot towards Dallas Goedert. So that's kind of where I'm focusing. And then N'Keal Harry, the rookie first-round pick, is going to see his first action this week. Can't remember. Philip Dorsett was on the injury report, but it looks like he's going to play. So we'll see how much run Philip Dorsett gets. N'Keal Harry, to me, is more of a slot receiver, but which Julian Edelman handles most of that duty. We'll see where they kind of move him around and if he factors in much at all today.
Yeah, just kind of TBT there, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for the morning, the afternoon and day games for today. Appreciate everyone and tuning in and throwing in your comments and questions. After us, you can find what's our next show? What do we got after us? I believe we got
Josh and Chris, right? Yeah.
And Josh coming in for Live Before Locks. You can catch myself back this evening with my man Emac, the two Erics, doing Live Before Locks for the Sunday showdown tonight with my Chicago Bears. Boy, we need to win. We need to win. We just need to win the rest of our games, which isn't going to happen. But excited for that one nonetheless. Again, real last minute, last second here. Didn't want to drop this into you guys. If you didn't hear it earlier or just tuning in. NFL main slate giveaway today, guys. Win a free 2019 NFL Awesemo Plus season pass. Guess the stack that scores the most points on today's 11-game main slate. What you need to do is like, retweet, and reply with your answer and follow at Awesemo_com, at Awesemo NFL to be entered. Looking forward to seeing you guys out there and seeing how you do. Sam, we're at time. Anything else that you want to get out to these good people before we wrap and we get it on to the next group?
Just throw out some Bears-Rams. Why not? David Montgomery is going to be a game-time decision. Brandon Cooks is out. Dan Trevathan out. And Rams right tackle Rob Havenstein is out. So a lot of injury issues in the late game. You have plenty of time to kind of factor those in, though. So
absolutely. And just saw the giveaway there dropped into the chat. That's it for us for this week. Good luck, everyone. Week 11. Hopefully it brings you fortune. We'll see you here again next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.
What's up, guys? We should be starting up now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Awesemo.com Live Before Lock Show. Be taking you through the NFL's Week 11. A lot of things changing, both in terms of the players in the lineups as well as my actual lineup. So we'll talk about that as we go. I'm Chris Spags, joined as always on Sunday mornings, our little church session with my pal, the Chubster, Josh Engelman. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm pretty good. Hold on, I'm a little warm. Give me 1 second.
Oh, no. Is this? Oh, no. Oh, look at that sexy back. Look at that. Oh,
Repping it.
Well, as always, we have Fantasy Cruncher, a partner of us at Awesemo.com, and you do have to thank them whenever you do anything successful in DFS. So that's the way it goes.
Shouts to Dave and Allison for the t-shirt. Appreciate it.
So yeah, the Fantasy Cruncher team, of course, you can get with any membership at Awesemo.com. So if you go to Awesemo.com/join right now and use that promo code Live Before Lock, you can also be thanking Fantasy Cruncher with half off your first month. I guess you should probably be thanking us more than them, but thank us both equally. There's a lot. It's almost Thanksgiving. So give thanks to everybody. Go to awesemo.com/join and check them out. And also, do you have another shirt underneath for Thanks Fantasy Draft?
No, but thanks Fantasy Draft. I'll happily wear a thanks Fantasy Draft if they send that to me too.
Just keep taking off shirts.
I'm like Chappelle. I'll do commercials for Coke and Pepsi. I don't care.
It would actually, if you just had it body painted on, that would also be fine. But thank you to Fantasy Draft. Of course, Fantasy Draft helps us put on this show every Sunday morning. And how would you survive without Live Before Lock on Sunday mornings? So go check them out right now. Go to fantasydraft.com. Check out the Hooters main event, one of the best tournaments you'll find industry-wide, one of the largest prize pools, and all the contest entry fees go right to the winners. So that is you. So go right now to fantasydraft.com and use that promo code AWESEMO for a free 7-day trial into the world of break-free DFS. And Josh, you're playing on Fantasy Draft tonight, I'm sure. How are you feeling about your lineup, sir?
Pretty good. It's I'm getting like a really narrow band of players today, and I'm usually pretty okay with that. It's terrifying while it's happening, but those are the days that I like the most. I either want to like destroy or get destroyed. I'm cool with like not having any middle ground today.
So I'm having a weird week where I actually made most of my lineups Friday night and Saturday morning just because the genius was flowing through. If you catch my drift. No, I don't know. I just felt like I was in the zone. I had some free time. I had to be home with my allergic darling Labrador, so I haven't been able to go out the last 2 days. And I have been making a lot of lineups. And I just want to ask you the question right away. Where are we shaking out with Brian Hill? Because I'm in Jalen Samuels territory with Brian Hill in terms of our ownership a couple weeks ago. I'm well above where we were with Ronald Jones last week. Where are you shaking out with Mr. Value play this week, Brian Hill? I'm
going to have quite a bit, pretty heavily chalky on, I'm playing most of my volume today on FanDuel. But on my previous crunch before we started the show, I'm running what I hope is my final crunch now that all inactives are in. He was my third most exposed running back. It's a price thing. It's really hard to avoid that sort of value today, especially with, guys like Christian McCaffrey sitting at 10-5 on FanDuel. If you're going to be going in that direction at all, you're going to need the savings.
Yeah, I mean, look, the matchup to me just looks like one where Brian Hill's in a really good spot here going against Carolina, who has been a funnel towards the run game, giving up over 5 yards per run. Also a poorly graded defense according to PFF. Really all the things that I look for as reason to play somebody. And I have regularly played. I've advocated for Aaron Jones against the Panthers. I mean, pretty much every time you play somebody against the Panthers, it's worked out. Of course, now that I've said this out loud, it'll be ruined. But hopefully he's not your 100-yard and a touchdown pick, which, by the way, JP in the chat wants to know already because he wants to adjust his lineups to get that player out of it.
I've got a really good idea. I think that we shouldn't do them until 12:55.
Oh, so people have to hang on the whole time and then they're screwed?
Yeah.
What chat? Give us your thoughts right now. Hit 1 in the chat if you think we should do it at 12:30 Eastern time. Hit 2 in the chat if you think we should do it at 5 minutes before lock, just to really set in chaos for everybody. Which now that I've said it out loud, I do kind of like that option.
And by the way, whatever your answer is, it doesn't matter.
No, that's a good point. But I want to give them, I'm a believer in democracy. That's what I'm known for. So I want them to get a chance. Also, shout out to the Maharishi. It's Maharishi giving us a super chat already just for being ourselves. He said it was $1 for Josh's striptease. So the chat's popping off already.
I'll take those singles.
Look, just throw them on the stage and you can shamefully scoop them up afterwards.
Exactly.
Always a delight. But anyway, guys, you can actually hit the numbers. Go ahead and hit them. I won't be penalizing you for anything. I'm just curious to see what it is. People want to know at the 9:30 mark, it seems, West Coast side.
Ooh, there's enough twos in there that it's fun.
I mean, you guys, if you haven't been watching every week, by the way, you've been missing out on a gold mine, both of hilarity for me and also for people who are just trying to figure out a fade for the week. Because last week it was Mike Evans in a really good spot who did not thrive thanks to Josh picking him as his 100-yard to TD pick. And Josh, I think you might know this number offhand. How many times have you been correct this year out of 10 weeks?
I am 10 for 10 in getting it wrong.
It is almost uncanny how Josh has been doing this. So we'll find out. Will that hot streak continue? Will he go the other way? I'll tell you what, I think Mike Evans is a pretty good play this week too.
Sure. Maybe he'll be my pick. It depends on how owned he is. I think I'm just going to pick like one of the chalkiest players of the day just to make sure that I can ruin it for everybody.
I mean, we talked about it off the air a little bit, just so you guys know, where we were saying like, oh, Josh, just pick a guy like who you don't like or you're not playing it. And you had a really good argument why you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, of course. Because the day that I pick someone I don't want, that guy's I'm gonna get it. He's gonna go crazy, and I'll get nothing out of it. So I would much rather have it go the opposite direction. Also, thanks to Justin Swearingen, he's going for $12.55.
Okay. So, is that a super chat that came
Yes,
through?
it was.
Justin Swearingen, one of our guys. All right. So Justin Swearingen likes chaos. The super chat does count for a lot of votes, but we'll figure it out. We'll play it by ear, and we'll let you guys know as we go. But we're giving a little professional radio tease here, so stay tuned either way, and you'll find out who to fade this week and who's going to be ruining your lineups in just a few short hours. Let's talk about some more of these higher owned guys here. Because there are a lot of plays that are obviously going to be more chalky. That is how DFS goes. Josh Jacobs, another dude. I'm a chalk donkey this week. I really have loved Brian Hill and Josh Jacobs from we talk about this sometimes. I write my column to Slants and Go Monday nights, Tuesday nights, depending upon the situation, but some mix of both of those. So I form my opinions first there. That's part of my research process. Then kind of do the strategy show Wednesday morning, and I kind of just flesh out everything throughout the week. I've been heavily on Brian Hill and Josh Jacobs since that article, and that has not changed for me at all. I like both these guys quite a bit. They're in a ton of my lineups. Where are you shaking out with Josh Jacobs in a smash spot going against Cincinnati, who gives up almost 180 rushing yards a game?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. On my last run, he was my fourth most owned running back, just a hair behind Brian Hill. So you and I are on the exact same page here. I don't feel bad at all about Josh Jacobs, Chalk. He's just good.
Yeah, he's just good. He's getting 20 touches a game, and this is an Oakland team who really does prefer to run the ball. And honestly, that's what gives me some pause. I mentioned it on The Contrary yesterday, which was a really good show with Alex and TJ Hernandez. So if you guys watched that, we appreciate it. And if you're not watching it, you should, because that's some of Alex's best information. And TJ was also really sharp too from 4for4 football. So go follow him at TJ Hernandez. But we talked about it a little bit yesterday where I really am concerned for Darren Waller a bit because I had a lot of ownership on him. And I went through his game logs, and he hasn't had really big games other than the times where Oakland's really trailed. I don't see them trailing. I think they could just lean on Josh Jacobs. I think they'll find that Terrell Williams touchdown. I mean, maybe they'll find a Waller touchdown. Certainly possibly gets there. But I think they really lean on Josh Jacobs, and he has, this is like his rookie of the year cementing campaign, I would think, because Cincinnati can't defend anybody on the ground. No,
Cincinnati is putrid. So, I don't know. Maybe Josh Jacobs will be my pick. How many people like Josh Jacobs today?
Oh, no. no, please don't. I'll pick first. I will take Josh Jacobs just to save you guys from that. But now you put it into the air. I don't know how it's going to work. It's so hard with these jinxes.
I love it. I love it so much.
Oh, it is terrifying. But no, I love Jacobs. Sway 420 in the chat saying he's allergic to the end zone, though he is not allergic to the end zone. He has let's see.
Yeah, but Cincinnati is like a defensive EpiPen for that.
Also that they're actually not. Their one thing they do good defensively is they're not bad in the red zone. They only give up 4.6 points per red zone trip, which is actually towards the better part of the league, which kind of surprised me. But it doesn't matter.
A little random.
A little random too. That's a fair point. But Jacobs does get the end zone runs. He gets one of the top numbers within the 5-yard line every week. He also gets 3.6 red zone runs per game. And he has a 4.2% rushing TD rate, which is right there amongst any of the best numbers in the league. So definitely not allergic to the end zone based upon what, the normal standards of what that would be. Maybe anecdotally you feel like he is, but he's not.
I don't know. Do I take Brian Hill? Do I take Josh Jacobs? Do I take, Dalvin Cook? McCaffrey?
Yes, take Dalvin Cook. I have none of him.
We shall see at $12.55.
Where are you shaking on Dalvin Cook? Because his ownership is right there. He is to me at that price point, I would rather have Zeke, but because I think Denver's defense is good enough. They've given up some decent performances to guys like Fournette, who are another guy who has a lot of volume, but I really didn't want to pay that Cook price this week. So where are you shaking out with Cook?
Cook is my 7th most exposed running back. You said you would rather have Zeke. He's 6th, so I've got those guys bookending each other. They're just so heavily involved that they're guys that I don't like to bet against because of their involvement in the offense. All right, first let's get rid of this John character permanently.
Sorry. Don't spam the chat, guys. If we can answer your question, we will. If it fits within the flow of the show, we will. And I do often look to the chat for things, but spamming your stuff is just not. We don't like that, and it doesn't help anybody, and it makes everybody else in the chat annoyed.
El Negro Loco, you don't have to put in super chats, my man. Just DM me that.
Hit that Venmo.
Yeah, enter a $2 single entry instead.
I think that I don't know. Where are you shaking out with Miles Sanders too? Because I guess we should talk about the other end, because I'm sure his ownership is sailing right now. It's popping up a lot for me with Osmo's projections, which by the way, you do get with your membership at osmo.com. Those are in fact Osmo's own projections you are getting when you go sign up at osmo.com/join. But Miles Sanders on the cheaper end, where are you going with him?
So he's showing up a lot more in the crunch that I'm running right now in comparison to when I ran it previously. That should be no surprise given all the information that has come out. My last crunch was like 45 minutes ago. So it looks like he'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He is 8th in my exposure currently on the crunch. I don't necessarily know where that shakes out once I start to sort. But at the very least, he's showing up in a quarter of the lineups that I've generated.
Okay. Yeah. Look, so one thing which I talked about with Josh before we came on the air was with Osmo's projections, I was getting a good amount of Russell Gage as one of my cheaper guys, him and Deebo Samuel. Now that we have Emmanuel Sanders in there and Gage, I think is just a little bit less appealing overall. And Sanders is going to be getting that full workload. He's coming up a lot more for me. So I think he would be a premier pay down option. Still certainly some risk going against New England. But I think one thing that is worth noting with Miles Sanders is they've been willing to really give him the ball a lot in games in which they are just outmanned defensively. They try to get him the ball in the seams. They try to pass it downfield to him. I think that could give him some more opportunity to get there. I don't know that I trust him on the ground in this spot going against New England, but New England's run defense is their weakest part by far.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to playing New England, it's just sort of what do you think they are going to prioritize taking away? And if it's not that, then you should be fine.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I don't mind going there today. I'm going to have less in the field today just because I just didn't get there and didn't do it with my advanced lineup prep. But he certainly looks like a solid value play today. I've got a question here from somebody who just fell off the screen asking about best cash plays. I guess we could talk about that fast because these two guys, I think at running back, the clear 2 cash plays for me would be Hill and Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it from a FanDuel perspective, so I don't know what the DK setup would be. That would be something easier for you to hit on. I would say Fournette, Hill, and Jacobs would be the 3 guys that I would have my eye on from a FanDuel perspective.
Yeah, I'm DK wise. Hill is 4,800. Jacobs is 6,900. Both those quite nice, especially Jacobs. But just nice prices for those guys. And the ownership to me looks to be comparable enough on FanDuel, where I would think those would be my cash game plays for both. McCaffrey a little bit cheaper on FanDuel relative to the overall salary, so I could see getting him for cash. But I would rather have Thomas in cash if I were to than McCaffrey because I think the running backs are a little bit more solid than the wide receiver plays this week.
I would if we're talking cash on FanDuel, I would rather go to Cook than McCaffrey. Slightly better point per dollar from Alex and comparable ownership, so I think it'll be a little bit easier there.
Elusive Smoke in the premium Slack, who has been one of my favorite guys in terms of your trials and tribulations, let's say, with the 100 yards and a TD picks. He's saying the quote unquote dong bit makes my week like it's a bad reality TV show. Will the Chubster finally break his streak of not being able to pick good football players to save his life? Tune into Live Before Lock and See. I don't know that makes us do it more at 9:30 or 12:30 or at 12:55. Tough question.
So I'm so excited for this. The next 40 minutes is going to be stellar.
All right. Well,
I just want to see actually, you know what? We should probably do it at 12:45. That's when people start to taper off to make their pick. So I want to just send people into a complete frenzy and light this place on fire.
All right, we'll try it out for 1 week. Look, it's 11/11. Well, I guess it's week 11 in the 11th month of the year. So it's 11/11. We'll make a wish and hope that your pick goes right at 12:45 East Coast time. That's official. We will announce them at 12:45 today.
I love it. It's so good.
Now I'm really concerned about it, to be honest. But that's fun. That's what makes it enjoyable.
I'm just writing down every name that you say you have a lot of.
Oh, come on. I need it this week, man. I need it. I'm having a good NBA week. I'm rolling a lot forward towards NFL. All right. Some of the other chalk plays of the week we should hit on. DJ Moore, a guy who was projected really well. DK in particular doesn't seem to adjust his price, but he's also going to be the top owned play on FanDuel because they also don't seem to want to adjust his price. So good for DJ Moore. His lack of touchdown equity apparently keeping him impressed. But he's had over 2 weeks in a row, 20 fantasy points, and he's been well targeted and getting some downfield targets as well. I think over 3 in the last 2 games, or 3 in the last 2 games, rather. So where are you shaking out with DJ Moore as apparently a chalkier wide receiver play than Michael Thomas?
He is quite chalky for me. Some might say the most chalky. He's 6K on FanDuel. He is by far Alex's best FanDuel wide receiver value, and I am just jamming him in, so to speak.
I am there too. I like DJ Moore. I don't really have an issue with it. I think I do have some concern that Atlanta, really pressured the quarterback better last week, and that was against a New Orleans team who's protected the quarterback pretty well. Actually, let me pull this up because I don't recall this offhand, but I feel like Carolina's pass protection is not the best. it's like an average pass protection unit for them. So we do see good pressure again from Atlanta. It could cause some concern for the deep targets that Moore gets, then deep targets that Samuels gets as well, or Samuel gets. I always forget. It's Jalen Samuels and Curtis Samuel, right? I think that's it. Yes. Okay. Samuel gets. But I think that's sort of a very minor fear. I'm willing to have some of those guys in my lineups, and Moore, I think, even if you're not stacking Kyle Allen, who's going to be one of the chalkier QB picks of the week, I think Moore is just a solid play on his own. I don't mind him standing alone either.
No, not at all. It's just, again, he's like the no-brainer cash play. At least, I don't know the price on DraftKings again. Just focused on FanDuel, but he's the no-brainer cash wide receiver today.
Yeah, I would agree. I do have more Michael Thomas in him, though. I really felt like Michael Thomas is a priority this week. I don't love the price jump, but he did just have 44 fantasy points against Tampa Bay in week 6. And Tampa Bay just cannot do anything to defend the pass, and they defend the run so well where I find it hard to believe it doesn't funnel towards him again. Where are you shaking out with Michael Thomas? Are you trying to find a way to make sure he gets into your lineups?
I'm mostly staying neutral on Michael Thomas. I have more Kamara than Thomas, so given the two pieces from the Saints, I'm going more towards Kamara, but I can't avoid Thomas. He's just too involved always. And those are the sort of things that I want to bet on. I want guys that I don't want to. I'm not a big proponent of hoping that I can find the 2% guy that goes off. I can't do it in football. Ignoring the 100 yards and a touchdown type stuff. I really like to rely on consistency more so than anything else. I run a much tighter player pool, I would say, than if you were sorting everything out by 150. I would guess that I have a lot less players in my player pool than the average person running 150 lineups. So I rarely get those, the second wide receiver from a certain team as my big option. I just prefer to jam in as much of the guys that I think are going to see the most amount of volume for a day.
Which makes sense. Michael Thomas is literally averaging 100-yard bonus on the year. So, I think that's over 11.4 targets a game, which actually went up after last week. So I just find it hard to get away from Michael Thomas right now, and he's heavily involved in that offense. Even when the Saints have a bad day, as they did last week, nobody else really had any impact at all fantasy-wise. Kamara had a terrible game, even though he had 10 targets. I think Thomas is just so involved. I am under the field. Actually, Kamara's ownership has come down again enough where I'm with the field now at 13% on DK. And I just put him in there because his price is too low, and maybe he's the guy who breaks Tampa Bay's defense. But that run defense, man, is so good. Giving up under 80 rushing yards per game, a 50% DVOA decrease in production, according to their stats there. It's a pass-catching running backs. So I don't know that I see the upside for Kamara here. Whereas Thomas is just all upside going against the Tampa Bay defense, giving up 300 passing yards a game. So they're giving up the QB bonus too, and Thomas is getting his own wide receiver bonus. I just don't see how you don't play Thomas.
He's fantastic. There's a reason he's one of the best wide receivers in football. Marcos nailed it in YouTube chat. It's the Manny Laura axiom. Play good players.
Yeah, and Thomas, there's he's one guy, his Twitter handle, I actually follow him because I don't really follow a lot of athletes, but I follow ones where I either like their style and their vibe, or I like them just so much as players. His Twitter handle is Can't Guard Mike, which I think is just
that's good.
Fantastic name. It's not like Michael Thomas 18 or whatever.
I don't really follow any athletes.
I don't know. I follow Des Bryant still. I follow a couple ones. I follow a couple of the ones that are noteworthy where they go viral for some. I follow Antonio Brown. You think that you just have to do.
Nothing. That whatever he does will end up in my feed, but that's basically why I don't follow players. If something is worth it, one of the NFL people that I follow will inevitably get it into my timeline.
That's fair. I also follow a couple athletes who follow me from my Barstool days. I feel like I have some punters who follow me and tight ends. I think actually might be George Kittle. No, that guy who was really good for a year for the Browns, Gary Barnidge. I feel like. What happened to him? He follows me, I think, on
Peyton
Twitter.
Hillis?
No, it was Gary Barnidge, where he was the guy. He was very into wrestling and stuff, and he had a couple he had a big year. He had one really big year, and now I don't think he's in the league anymore.
I had a 25th ranked UFC heavyweight follow me one day, and I was just how the fuck did you find this?
He loves your DFS takes on MMA.
And not an American. Like a Serbian or something along those lines. Just some guy that was just I I don't understand how this happened.
Alex, of course, Alex Baker, the founder of the site, Osmo himself. Go follow him at Osmo DFS, saying OJ Simpson, the best athlete follow.
Better than him following you.
I follow OJ.
Allegedly.
I'll tell you what, his tweets, his video tweets are something else, man, because there's always an air of danger floating around.
Hey guys, Juice here.
hey, no, he's actually very, hey guys, Juice here. Like, Patrick Mahomes don't let me down this week. Or like, he just gets really mad. Like, there's just a glimmer of what could be there. But yeah, one of the better follows too. And also shout out to the Boss Man being very funny on Twitter recently. I've enjoyed his videos he's doing for our sub handles or at Osmo NBAs and such, because those have been very quality. He had Dennis Smith going for 10x that one day where clearly nobody was playing him.
Yeah, that's the boss. That's why he's number one.
That is why he's number one. While we are talking Twitter real fast, if you go to our pinned tweet right now on at Osmo_com, if you guess the stack, the QB and wide receiver that scores the most fantasy points on today's week 11 main slate there. Yeah, today's 11-game main slate. I think it's week 11. I misread that. But anyway, go check them out right now. You can win a free Osmo Plus NFL pass right now. Check the pin tweet. It'll tell you what to do. It's a simple retweet, like, reply thing. So just go get in there. If you guess, doesn't matter. Just guess, and you could be entered to win. So go check it out right now on the pin tweet on at Osmo_com. Let's talk QBs a bit more because these are obviously going to be very important guys to go with today. And we do have some chalk QBs to hit on. People are asking about in the chat right now, including Kyle Allen, who was the chalk QB of the week. Actually, no, he's now behind Lamar Jackson, but let's talk about Kyle Allen first. We talked about Moore's prospects, McCaffrey, pretty much about as much of a lock as he can be relative to his price. And some other guys going to be popular too. Greg Olsen, Curtis Samuel with no S at the end, going to be popular. So where are you shaking out with Kyle Allen as a guy who maybe doesn't have the biggest ceiling, but if all these guys are projecting well and going to be owned, you would think you'd want to have some.
He was my most exposed quarterback on my original crunch. I've got a couple guys sort of jammed in the same area: Lamar, Matt Ryan, Derek Carr. But for right now, Kyle Allen is going to be the guy that I'm getting to a lot. A little bit of that is probably skewed because of DJ Moore. But I mean, I am getting to Olsen as well.
Yeah, I have all these guys. I mean, I certainly have the most Moore. I have a good amount of Greg Olsen. Just because I don't love taking a chalk tight end. We talked about that yesterday on the contrary at a little bit of length, but I think he's still a good enough play here. His targets were one of the most he's had this year last week. And Atlanta, I just have to assume it's a one bad Atlanta week. And if Atlanta gives it up like they have every other week, should be a spot here where a lot of these guys can find production. And if Kyle Allen is dragged along with it, he doesn't have to be that great. He just has to be competent. How about Lamar for you? Because he's almost too high priced now, doesn't stack well. We know all the kind of issues with him, but he's at a price point where people apparently will still be getting to him, but probably the biggest ceiling and maybe the best floor on the slate, though. Houston does stop the run better, so he should have to get a little more passing action today. How are you feeling about Lamar Jackson, who's projected to be one of the better values, too, despite his high price point?
I'm a fan. This is DFS. That dude is running the ball like he's a good running back while also still being involved in the passing game. Dude's just a lethal fantasy player. I'm really anxious to see where he ends up, like, I don't know, late next year, maybe the following year. Because eventually, running is going to become problematic. Athleticism starts to wane. He'll rely more on his throwing. But
he's only 21 right now.
So when that hits like the nexus of his athleticism is still there and he's seen enough in the NFL, he's going to be really, really difficult to game plan against.
I mean, it's like the thing that like he's still really young because I was listening to one of the Ringer podcasts where they're saying I think he just turned 21 or he might have or somewhere in that range, but like or he was drafted when he was 20. I don't know, whatever. Who fucking cares? But
he's got to be older than 21. You got to be 3 years out either way.
Lamar well, that doesn't. If he started at 17, then he could have been drafted at 20. Let's see how old he is. We'll figure this out. He's 22 right now. He just turned 22 in January. So there you go. But he started. That was what it was. He started at 21. So yeah, I mean, look, if his peak athleticism is what, I mean, for a quarterback, it's not the same as basketball, but it's probably what, 26, 27. So 5 years.
I mean, I would guess it's probably more right now than anything else.
No, is it? I mean, speed wise, but in terms of putting it all together and also staying fast, like running backs don't usually hit their prime until 24, 25. So if we're treating him like a running back, he's going to be at that physical age, I would think. Yeah,
I mean, like it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, sure. And I think the mental part for him, like him at 24 will be a really interesting case. And it'll probably be priced like it'll be McCaffrey, Thomas, and Jackson still priced in that same range. Just everybody being 10K.
I just got a lot of Greg Olsen. Holy shit.
Let's go through some of the other quarterbacks here. People laughing at Kyle Allen. Look, it doesn't make sense unless you actually run projections. If you run projections, which is what you should be doing, even if you're hand building, like I like to hand build too, but I run projections to get a read on where everything is going to be. And Kyle Allen just projects really well relative to value. And if you were trying to get to the Michael Thomas guys, if you're trying to get to Josh Jacobs, he's a guy who you end up on a lot where you're not completely depreciating the value of the rest of your lineup. How about Drew Brees? Because he's now owned more than Derek Carr. Not big on Derek Carr and big on Drew Brees, just given what we talked about with Tampa Bay's pass defense. Where are you landing on Brees?
He's my fourth most exposed quarterback. I just loaded in my crunch now, but boy, oh boy, did he bone me last week. Whew!
The boning of a lifetime, some could say.
I mean, normally I'd be okay with that, but it was just brutal. It was absolutely brutal. So I'm going right back to the beating again. But so much of that is just the simple fact that there aren't a lot of quarterbacks out there that have Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas on their team. And that helps a ton. So I have to have some Breeze.
And Jared Cook, too, his targets were up last week. I think in a week of, I really don't like tight end this week. I think it's one of the worst tight end weeks we've had, where really the pay up option is going to a guy who really splits his load pretty well with Mark Andrews and everything else. I mean, we're not going to probably have George Kittle. He's doubtful. Eric Ebron saw his targets increase last week, but does that hold with Brissett back in there? Different matchup. I don't know about that. OJ Howard not buying in following that week up. Zach Ertz, you would think he'd be the one the Patriots try to take away, given that Alshon Jeffrey's banged up and not playing well. And Darren Waller, I talked about him earlier. I just don't think he has the ceiling in spots where he's not going to be where he's not going to be trailing from a pretty decent margin. And I don't see them trailing in Cincinnati. So who do you go to? I think it's like Olsen and Cook for me a lot. I think Cook is a guy who's the ownership is not quite there in him as much as Olsen.
By the way, at least for FanDuel, the Saints, i.e. Drew Brees, have the highest top stack odds, and their ownership is basically half of that. So per our projections and per Alex's model, Drew Brees is the best FanDuel option on the slate if you're stacking, which you should be.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, if you guys are just tuning in right now, we are holding off the 100-yard and a TD picks for 15 more minutes. We want to build anticipation and also just to torture everybody, because that's what Josh likes to do.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly why this is happening.
That's why every stream with you is like a new edition of the Saw movies. It's all torture in different ways. I am kidding. I enjoy them all. I enjoy being tortured by you every week.
You're welcome.
Derek Carr, how are you feeling about him? I'm another guy hasn't broke 24 fantasy points on the year. I don't think he throws when he doesn't have to a lot. He might throw a little bit, but I just don't see him needing to score a bunch here, even though that total's really high. Where are you shaking out with old Derek Carr?
I have a little bit of him, because he very easily pairs with Waller, but I would rather just sort of have a bunch of Jacobs and not have much of a tie to Carr. I do have some shares of Carr. He's one of the, for all intents and purposes, I have, 7 quarterbacks. I got sprinkling of a couple other guys, but for right now, Carr is like the guy that I have the least of anybody.
Yeah, I have a little bit of Carr. He projects as a decent value. I just don't know that I see the ceiling there. And I have a couple of lineups of him with Waller and Ty Williams, just in case somehow that breaks weirdly where Jacobs, I don't know, just doesn't get the touchdowns. I still find it hard to believe Jacobs fails, but that's the way I'm willing to go to Carr, because there's really not a correlation. Like, Jacobs not very targeted in the pass game. I don't see any reason why he would be in this spot given how Cincinnati's played. So I just don't love Carr this week, but I think a little bit of exposure makes sense given his price and the really high team total for them. Is it still at 30 points?
It was a big number the last I looked at it. I don't know if it's moved.
It's actually now up even more. Yesterday it was at 30 implied points for them. Now it's 30.5. So it's gone.
That's big.
That's the biggest on the slate for Oakland. Like, how? There has to be defensive touchdowns accounted for in that. I just find it hard to believe that Derek Carr throws for 3 and then Jacobs runs in for 1.5. How does that? I just don't see how that total works out, but we'll find out. We'll find out. A very interesting game coming up later today. Callie, I appreciate you, but this is not the time. Other QBs that you have? Anybody of note popping up for you? Matt Ryan was somebody Osmo was big on, and he came up a little bit for me, but I just don't love the spot for him.
Yeah, he's my most exposed quarterback.
Tell the people why.
Let me get it back up on the screen here. As I mentioned before, for the Saints, highest top stack odds on FanDuel, half the ownership. in comparison, Matt Ryan and Atlanta, second highest top stack odds, close to half the ownership. So just playing the game of playing the guys that Alex thinks will go craziest that are also not that owned. Simple, I know.
No, that certainly checks out to me. One guy who he mentioned yesterday as well, who he was big on, who for some reason, or not big on, but thought was a good contrarian QB play was Ryan Finley. I do have a little bit of him.
So do
I have a
I.
little the crappy Bengals, Finley and Driscoll, or former Bengal for Driscoll, but those guys are cheap enough to have upside. But you said you have some Finley too, so just because of Oakland's defense being that bad in this price?
Honestly, it's like 0.75 lineup, so it's essentially randomness.
Sure.
I can't like advocate for it. It could just as easily be 0, and I wouldn't even notice. He's not one of the guys that are I've got 4 guys at 16% or higher at quarterback. He's not one of them. So,
Major McGee asking why is no one on Winston? So here's why I'm not on Winston, and I'll tell you very fast. New Orleans has one of the better pressure rates in the league. They bring a good amount of pressure, just under 30% pressure rate for them. Jameis under pressure, a much worse quarterback. He's generally not a good quarterback. He's throwing under a 60% completion rate. He's also turning it over about 3% of the time, over 3% of the time. Under pressure, he comes up even more. Let me just pull up the stats. He turns it over at a 5% clip. He gets sacked 24% of the time, and his QB rating drops to 52. So I still have some Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is a much more interesting play without Marshawn Lattimore out there. And maybe not having Lattimore out there does decrease the pressure. But Jameis, to me, not a guy I would trust going against the Saints defense. Even last week, they lost to Atlanta, and they still look pretty good in terms of that situation. So I really don't find it a spot where I'm trying to get to Jameis. But maybe, Josh, you disagree because he is low owned, and we know that he has that upside even when he makes mistakes literally every single game multiple times.
Yeah, those mistakes don't hurt you all that much because of the volume. He's my 5th most exposed quarterback. So he's the first guy after the 4 dudes that I have a ton of. And he's just one of those guys where I'm not comfortable not having at least a little bit of him because he has the ability to just go completely bonkers. And he can go bonkers while also playing bad. Like, if you told me that he threw for 405 TDs and 4 picks, I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure.
I think that's a fair take and probably a reason to have some of them. And I do think the matchup gets better for Evans. There's one thing, I don't mean to keep referencing on the contrary, but we did have some good points that TJ brought up actually yesterday.
You should reference on the contrary. It's a fantastic show.
Thanks, Josh. It was nice too, because I already really confident in my hosting yesterday, which I was like, I think I'm always a pretty good host, but for some reason people really enjoyed my hosting in that one. But
I think it leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's just me.
You son of a bitch. But, Chris Godwin apparently plays better for Tampa Bay whenever in the few games where they've had a big lead and accumulated that lead early. And Evans has been the better player, which logically makes sense. The deep receiver would be the better play in the games in which they're trailing. And to me, this seems like a game in which they'll be trailing. So I would favor Evans. Evans' ownership being down after you gave him the kiss of death last week, I think makes him look even more appealing. So I like Evans quite a bit, and I think he's a really interesting guy to go back with that Breeze, Thomas, and either Kamara or Cook stack.
Who am I going to give the kiss of death to this week? Tune in 9 minutes to find out. Ah!
I imagine you like the Crypt Keeper with that one, where you're like very ghoulishly.
I have it chambered and ready, so I'm excited.
Oh no! Well, I'm picking first. I'll take the bullet on one of our guys. It's something the chat recommended. There's just one guy I have to take the bullet for, but everybody else we'll find out. Premium Slack has a question, which I'll answer fast for our guy. Don't Embiid my status. Asking about Kenny Stills specifically on FanDuel. You're playing more on FanDuel. Do you have any Kenny Stills today?
Yeah, way too much.
Oh, okay. So tell me why, because Alex is big on him too, or at least thought he was a pretty valuable play.
Yeah, just one of the better value options at 5,500 right now. So I've got comparable amounts of him and Calvin Ridley, but Stills is just set up. He's sort of the one guy that I'm getting to. So I obviously mentioned like 10 minutes ago about not having a crazy amount of like dart throw type players. He's the dart throw for me today.
And it makes sense. He's still no Will Fuller out there, and we should see pretty tight coverage going to DeAndre Hopkins. I think one thing, too, is if Stills ends up seeing Marcus Peters in coverage, I don't know for sure that he will based upon him running a lot of routes. I mean, he moves around enough where he should see some. But I think like Peters, if he gambles on DeAndre Hopkins, I think that's fine. If he gambles on Stills, he's going to get beat deep because Stills always just does double moves. So I think that's sort of one thing that intrigues me about Stills. I don't have a ton of him relative to the field on DK. And I kind of wish I had a little bit more because stylistically, he does seem like a guy who could play well against Baltimore. They also blitz at a 50% clip, so it's going to open up some room. I'm intrigued by Stills, and I think he's worth some exposure, but definitely not a guy to load up on because he's about as variant as you'll find anybody in the league.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about some of the running backs and see if there's anybody else that we hit on or haven't hit on. Rather, I think we've covered QBs pretty well. Anybody you're getting at running back that we haven't touched on, do you feel like is valuable enough that the people should be maybe having some of their lineups?
Nobody that is like off the radar or anything. The guys that I have the most exposure to are all guys that are being owned in the industry: Fournette, Kamara, Cook, Hill, Jacobs, Zeke, Tevin Coleman, Miles Sanders.
Yeah, Fournette looks a little more appealing on FanDuel. I didn't land on a ton of him. I do think there's some logic in going to him this week just because Nick Foles should be allowed to throw deep more, and that should give them more chances to have just goal line carries for Fournette, which has been one spot he's really lacked on the year. Fournette, relative to like his touch load, really not seeing a lot of carries within the 5. And while his red zone looks are right there, he's getting 3.6 red zone carries per game, only 0.4 carries per game within what's inside the 5-yard line. So I think he could be due for that TD regression, which you talk about, that positive regression. And he's had that 25 touch per game workload. So it's hard to really argue with him if he's going to have more deep ball chances from Nick Foles to kind of punch it in. Fournette could be sneakier, and he's not going to be owned on DK this week much.
Yeah, he looks great on FanDuel just because of the half-point PPR, so it fits him a little bit better. Not that he hasn't been involved in the passing game this year.
Other running backs who I have a little bit of, actually really didn't spread out my running back exposure too much this week as we talked about some of the guys. I like Zeke. I like, obviously, Zeke and McCaffrey to be the higher price guys I'm willing to go to. And then a lot of Hill and Jacobs as my base. So if the chalk busts this week at running back, I will be a very sad panda. But I think those guys, to me, look like really strong plays. And Joe Mixon, too. The guy I got a little bit of, we talked about yesterday. 5,500 at his price point. Saw 30 carries and a couple of targets last week. Take the onus off of Ryan Finley, I think, is what the move is. Really not a reason why they wouldn't do that against Oakland. And that was in a game script, too, where they were trailing, and they still just kept giving Mixon carries. So I think Mixon's intriguing at 5,500 on DK.
Yeah, he's 6,600 on FanDuel. He was like basically the last name I didn't say there, but he is next for me after Miles Sanders. I'm 4 times the field. I'm not like super excited about it, but the talent is certainly there.
Did you get any Kalen Ballage? I don't know if it's the same value equation on FanDuel.
I have 5%, so nothing outlandish.
Yeah, that's about where I am too. I do think the spot for him does grade out fairly well. Being at home, Buffalo's run defense has been getting worse week by week. We've seen some big performances coming up against them. They're giving up more yards per carry, and also their grades have just dropped every week too from PFF. So I'm intrigued by him a little bit in the spot. He sucks. He gets 2 yards per attempt. He's not been good, but 20 carries and a couple targets, it's really hard to argue with.
It's hard to get away from, right?
Yeah, I'd rather have Brian Hill a million times over, but I think a little bit of Ballage just makes sense because that type of volume is impossible to find at that price. Even Miles Sanders, I don't think we'll have that at his price.
Would you rather have Brian Hill if I pick him for 100 yards and a touchdown?
Oh no, I think that might put me towards Ballage. But the thing is, like, he could have 98 in the TD, and I feel like that has happened for you before. So it doesn't mean the guy's dead, especially at that price point.
Yeah, and I think Mike Evans had I didn't fully murder him last week. I think he ended up with 80 to 90 yards receiving. So
yeah, not a great day for him though.
A couple of these guys completely died on the vine.
Yeah, I mean the David Johnson is still going to be hard to top that.
One play.
Yeah, it's not the best.
Evans finished last week 4 catches for 82 yards. After having 3 straight weeks of 16, 12, and 17 targets, he got 6.
Yeah, that's all part of the Josh Mush. You change everything. Change everything in the pipeline.
Yeah, we're going to be changing it again today soon.
Oh, boy.
3 minutes to go.
3 minutes to go. We will hit those 100-yard and TD picks. Let's talk a little bit of receivers before we do it. We talked about DJ Moore again, but real fast for anybody tuning in. DJ Moore, the chalk play of the week. I'm above the field still because he just looks solid to me, and his price isn't high enough for what he's been getting. Getting 9 targets a game, getting a good amount of deep looks per game, and just catching it at a really high clip. So DJ Moore, one more time. Where are you with the field?
Just a hair over it.
Okay, I'm a little more than a hair over it. I'm pretty in on DJ Moore, but some lineups I couldn't get there. But I do think he's a good. I talked about it earlier. A good standalone play, a good play to pair with Kyle Allen. Don't have any issue with him. Michael Thomas also going to be highly owned. We talked about him, but real fast again. I think he's a really strong play. I don't mind paying up for him, especially in this spot against Tampa Bay. If you are going to pay up for him, this seems like the time to do it. But Michael Thomas, where are you with the field?
He's the guy I'm paying up for most.
All right. Yep. Same for me. I'm paying more for him than McCaffrey, even though I like both those guys fairly well. A little easier to get other running backs, a little harder to find wide receivers with Michael Thomas's upside. Mike Evans, his ownership has sailed up a bit too, actually now. So, all right. Well, danger zone now that Marshawn Lattimore is out should open Mike Evans a bit. I'm actually now with the field on Evans. I thought I'd be above it, but now I'm with it. Where are you on Evans?
I'm light, so I'm sure he's going to go right back to being fucking incredible.
Seems fair. Look, game script favors him. We just talked about it a second ago. I think it's a nice spot to match with Evans' ownership. Julio Jones. I'm under the field on Julio. Worries me a little bit because his price is down enough on DK where he could have that Michael Thomas upside, especially with no Austin Hooper out there, no Devonta Freeman. That opens up about 12 targets a game. I think they may go elsewhere. I do think he's going to find some tough coverage today. Carolina's pass defense has been good. Where are you shaking out with Julio?
He is my third most owned wide receiver. I have twice the field right now. That's going hand in hand with having a ton of Matt Ryan, but I've got a bundle of Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley are my number 3 and number 4 wideouts. So I am hitching my wagon to the Falcons passing game.
Certainly not a bad wagon to hitch to.
No.
We had some questions about defenses and special teams, which, for the most part, we talk about those. There is a lot of variance with them. And even on the weeks where I felt really confident about my team, and sometimes it worked out, like the Patriots, I was very much on their early run, even when their prices went up. Then there were a couple of weeks where they, quite frankly, just don't get there as well. So I've been kind of just playing random defenses, trusting Alex's projections a bit more. But I have some Saints because if Jameis is turning it over, Alex had him as one of his better graded defenses. I have a little bit of Cardinals, just because they are at 1,500 on DK, and I do think position players are more important. And I also think that Garoppolo can turn it over against Arizona. Arizona's defense getting a little better, and I think people may be chasing that game a bit too much because he went nuts that Thursday night a couple weeks ago. And the Vikings too, going against Denver, very low total at home. I think that's a nice spot for them, but a little tougher to get their price regularly. Anybody you're getting a lot of on defense, so you feel like the people should be playing some of?
Redskins, Dolphins, Vikings, Niners, Bills are the 5 that I have the most.
Your Redskins project well for Alex too, and Sam Darnold on the road, certainly going to have some turnovers. I have less Redskins than I think the field will have, just because I think Darnold's going to have a decent day throwing a Crowder. Crowder going to get a lot of open underneath routes, and I think that'll make him pretty viable today as a play, and also may upset Washington's day enough. All right, it's that time. The 100 yards and a TD pick. So if you don't want Josh to curse your lineup, hit that like button right now. It's the only way it's not going to happen is if you hit the like button. And otherwise, he's got all the power in his hands, except for this one player who I will save from Josh's cruel iron fist of jinxing. Josh Jacobs, you are safe this week. You are my 100 yard and a TD pick.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun.
Oh, no, not Brian. Not Brian.
All right. For my 100 yard and a touchdown pick.
Wait, drum roll.
I have decided to take my talents to South Beach. Now, wrong thing.
Somebody going to go Caleb Balash.
I'll take Brian Hill.
Oh, come on. Why? There's better plays than that. There's better play. If you actually want to get it right, there's better plays.
Look, I have a bunch of him. I completely understand why he's getting the ownership. Looks like a fantastic play as far as I'm concerned.
I think now you're just trolling. Like, you really think
Brian Hill is a lock for 100 yards and a touchdown today. Lock it in. Lock it in. And then I'm going to win all the monies, and it's going to be like, yo, thanks, Fantasy Cruncher.
Oh, the chat. I love when the chat gets it.
I love the slow reveal.
Look, we have to hope Brian Hill. Chat, we have one hope today. That's Brian Hill getting 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. And no receiving yards. No receiving yards.
By the way, Emac took Kamara. That's the one that I would have happily taken.
Oh, you see, why not take him?
Because it hurts more people to take Hill. You saw the ownership.
Oh, you. I mean, look, if you drive Hill's ownership down a little bit, I guess I'll be happy with that. And I'll just hope that your curse ends this week. It's got to end at some point. That's the thing.
But will it be today?
What a dangerous game we're playing here on Live Before Lock.
I'm playing fast and loose with everybody's entries today.
By the way, if social media is watching this right now, this would be a video to crop right now, by the way, because we have not. This has really been the most sure thing. Like, we give great picks on these shows. I'll give us our own. I'll tout our touting. But this has been the one lock we've had every week for 10 weeks of the season.
And now we have a different lock, Brian Hill.
Oh man, Brian Hill.
I just said Brian Hill out loud, and for a second I was like, shit, I don't even know if that's his name.
Joxih. I'm gonna assume that's jokes in the chat, in the YouTube chat. Brian Hill ownership has left the chat.
Guys, lock your Brian Hill in now. If you don't have him, put him in. Stone cold lead pipe lock of the week. Brian Hill, 100 yards and a touchdown. When have I gone wrong?
Oh man, what a great game! What a great game! I'm so sad for my life. I'm literally like, I have like, I think 90% Brian Hill.
Bait him at your own peril, people.
What a dark day this could be, but we'll find out in a little bit. Let's go through some other receivers who have some ownership while I try to compose myself and not cry. Curtis Samuel, Deebo Samuel, both the Samuel boys with no S's. They don't believe in that S on the end. Those guys are going to be pretty decently owned. Deebo, I have more than I would like, given that we know Emmanuel Sanders is going to be in, but I do hope that he has some upside still at a very low price point. Had a really monster game last time out. Deebo Samuel, where are you shaking out with him?
I basically don't have either Samuel.
Oh, okay.
Curtis Samuel. Minimal Samuel.
I'm surprised you don't have Curtis because you have enough DJ Moore where you'd think that you'd want some Samuel just as the pivot.
I have 3.5%. He projects really poorly for Alex.
Yeah, no, because this price is up enough. I mean, he's only $600 less on, at least on DK than Moore. So logically, you should just go to Moore. But I have a little bit of Samuel just because I have so much more that it would be dumb to not have some Samuel.
Sorry, I was drinking more coffee.
No, it's fine. You enjoyed it. Brian Hill, 1 yard, 8 fumbles.
One play, then goes home.
I like the idea of him just rushing 8 times and fumbling every time. Like it would ruin my lineups, but what a hilarious chalk day that would be.
I'm really hoping that he gets like 99 yards and 2 TDs.
That would be fantastic. That would be the best possible outcome. All right, guys, I feel like we talked about all the finer points. Real fast wide receivers who I also have just an inkling on that I enjoy. I talked about Jamison Crowder. Again, Washington gives up a lot of underneath passes. That Jets offensive line can't protect long enough to open up Robbie Anderson downfield. So that's going to make Demaryius Thomas valuable too. But also Jamison Crowder has actually been around 20 fantasy points the last 2 weeks. Throw in revenge if you want, but it's really more the matchup and a little revenge. Yeah, why not? Let's see. Any other guys? We talked about Stills, who's a guy that popped up a little bit. Chris Godwin, I have some of just because I have enough Evans and enough of the Saints where it makes sense to have some Godwin, and Russell Gage, a guy I have some of who I actually tried to walk back exposure there, but the hope is that he picks up some of those targets vacated by Freeman and Hooper. Again, 12 targets a game out of that lineup, and Gage has been involved running out of the slot. It is a spot where you can attack in that Carolina defense. So I think Gage is worth some exposure at his cheap price, and now he's not terribly chalky. I think he's worth being with the field on, which I am.
Josh picked Brian Hill. Fantasy sites across the industry crash.
Well, look, we're getting big enough now where I think we might we can slowly move ownership like this much. Like I don't think a lot. I don't think you have to be at like a gigantic scale to move it at an appreciable way. But
NFL's tough.
NFL's tough. Kevin Z, 1 yard, 1 fumble, questionable return, Brian Hill.
If something like that happens where he goes down like immediately with an injury, I'm afraid to look at Twitter.
I mean, honestly, like you're the only factor.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. It's so much fun.
All right, guys, if you have questions on either the premium Slack or the YouTube stream, drop them right now because we'll run through some because we don't do enough questions on here, but I feel like the slate to me was pretty cut and dry with how I was approaching it. And I think for you, it seems similar. So we'll do some. Don't beat my status again. Can you rank Julio, Edelman, Cooper for FanDuel cash? How would you rank those guys?
Julio, Edelman, Cooper?
Yep.
Cooper. Just highlighting all these guys in front of me. Edelman, Julio. So I would say Julio first by quite a bit. And then I have more Edelman. They've got similar value rankings, similar ownership. So I would go Julio, Edelman, Cooper.
I would go, looking at the ownership for Julio. Yeah, Julio is definitely first. I would agree on that. Yeah, I think Edelman too. Yeah, I think I agree with your rank. Julio, Edelman, and Cooper. I like Cooper too, but that's a tough one. But Edelman I think is pretty safe, and I do like that that New England stack against Philly too. I have a little bit of Tom Brady with Sanu and Edelman. I think it's an interesting one because they defend the run pretty well, and I think they may be able to cage up James White enough to open that production for those guys. Which QB scores more FanDuel points in the early slate, Breeze or Jackson? I think, oh man.
Gotta be Jackson.
Yeah, raw points has to be Jackson. I would say Jackson, but I do like Breeze as a tournament play. So like I have much more Breeze than Jackson this week.
Yeah, who has more raw points and who's like a better play for a GPP are kind of two different things given the way that would roster them. But by all accounts, Lamar Jackson is the highest projected quarterback today.
All right. Looking at the YouTube chat, see if you have any questions. People still tilted about Brian Hill, it seems. Brandon Allen against an overrated Vikings secondary. Neil is asking in the YouTube chat. I think it's a Vikings spot. I think Brandon Allen had his best week he's going to have. I think they also want him to fail so they can get Drew Lock in. So not that they'll play that way, but I just think Minnesota's defense at home, I don't mind them against Brandon Allen. Low total too. Like, but I'm playing Jeff Driscoll. So if you want to play Brandon Allen just for price, sure. But Driscoll got almost 20 fantasy points against Chicago. Like, I don't know why that doesn't matter to people. Like, that's a good defense that he got 20 fantasy points on.
I mean, you and I both know why that doesn't matter to people. Well, actually, I don't know why it doesn't matter to people. I know why it doesn't matter.
Yes. No, that's fair. But I mean, 46 pass attempts, and that offense really has been pass heavy, and they let him do an approximation of what Stafford does. He checked down more than Stafford does, but I have Driscoll. I'll tell you right now, Driscoll, I made a really weird millionaire maker lineup this week that has Driscoll not correlated with anybody because he opens up all the guys that I like as skill positions.
Make it Driscoll. Can't beat it.
He runs, man. He's like white Florida QB fast. It's a very specific kind of fast, but it's a kind of fast.
New Timmy.
Yes, exactly. Except he can throw slightly better, like that much better. And he has Galladay and Jones and Amendola. He has really good targets. Whatever, we'll find out. Jeremiah Johnson, we don't usually answer this kind of question because we give you guys all the things that we're putting in our lineups. Hopefully that's enough for you to build your lineups, but I always enjoyed Jeremiah. He's a long timer here. FanDuel single entry, who would you start your lineup with? Let's say the first three guys.
Brian Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, FanDuel single, Fournette, Kamara, DJ Moore.
I would go Hill, Jacobs, DJ Moore. And on both sides, those would be the guys I would start lineups with. Or Thomas. I mean, but Thomas I feel like might be.
What's my optimal? Actually, a better way to answer this question. Come on, Fantasy Cruncher, sort it out.
Brian Hill just showed up at my house with a 6-pack of White Claw. Apparently, he just quit football.
What did I say? What was my answer? Fournette, Michael Thomas, and I said DJ Moore, right?
Fournette, Jacobs, and not Thomas. I think.
Fournette, Brian
Kamara.
Fournette, Brian Hill, Michael Thomas. That is now my answer.
Brian Hill. All lineups start and end with Brian Hill.
Yeah,
I agree. Let's see. Had an either or question in here. Edelman and Brown or Thomas and Deebo Samuel? Who would that be for you?
Edelman and Brown.
Assume John Brown. I don't know what Brown.
Marquise.
Too many Browns.
Edelman and Brown. What were the other two?
Thomas and Deebo Samuel. I think it'd be Thomas and Deebo Samuel.
Ooh, that is close. Yeah, it's going to be Thomas and Deebo Samuel, but man, that's tight.
Yeah. Some people excited because they are not playing Brian Hill and think he sucks, so that's fun. People debating hot dogs and whether they're a sandwich. I really don't know about that take. I don't think it is a sandwich because of the weird bun. Like, I don't think a kielbasa is a sandwich either. It's got to be separated bread.
I don't know about that.
So that's my take on it. I think sandwiches have to be separated bread.
So is a meatball sub a sandwich to you?
Yes, because sometimes people do still open the bread.
Okay, well, sometimes the hot dog bun opens.
But not deliberately. Nobody's like, oh, let me get this hot dog rolling around.
Yeah, no, it's a hot dog is a sandwich.
Let's see. You guys are a joke just like that Skywalker guy. I don't know who he's talking to. He could be talking to the chat. Yeah, I feel like Luke Skywalker did well. Also, I watched The Mandalorian. Good show.
Nope.
I saw enough touting of it and where I checked it out. It's very Star Wars. I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, but it felt more like the original Star Wars. I enjoyed it.
I've never seen a single second of Star Wars, so
okay. Wow. I don't even know. I'm looking for questions, but okay. Hot dogs ain't separate. You're right, Dave. Hot dogs are not separated. That's the thing. That's my take. Dave knows food, though. I do know that.
Dave knows pictures of garbage food.
It's funny, like the one day we're ready to take questions, there are much less questions. I feel like normally there's just an assload of questions.
I think it's just that kind of slate.
Yeah, look, it felt. That's why I was willing to make my lineups on a Friday, where I'm like, I think these guys are fine. Miles Sanders, I know you weren't big on him, but real fast because I saw some debate on as I'm scrolling up there. Actually, no. Here's one question: Mike Evans or Josh Jacobs? Who do you pick? That's got to be Jacobs in terms of security.
Yeah, for sure, Jacobs. Somebody just said a hot dog is not a sandwich according to the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council. Yeah, I'm really worried about that illustrious group of people. Holy shit. How do we get through the day without letting us know what the Hot Dog and Sausage Council thinks? Whew.
Here's an interesting question from Marcos, which will be the last one because we are 1 minute away from lock, guys. Here's my question: is playing naked QB a good strategy? On a slate like this where you have so many crappy stacks, I don't hate it as much. But what do you think about that? You prefer the plus EV play is always going to be connecting that and having the stacks like that.
Yeah, I'm not a naked QB guy.
All right, yeah, that's fair. Greg SJ, thank you for showing up, Greg. We appreciate you always being in the chat. You're one of the good ones.
20 seconds to get Brian Hill into your lineups, guys.
Do you think Josh is bad at 100 yards in a TD because he doesn't believe in the force? That's very much a possibility. Maybe he doesn't have enough of not thetans. What is the thing? Midichlorians. That's what they call it in Star Wars. Thetans is Scientology.
I was just gonna say, isn't that the thing that like you find out how many of those things you have in Scientology?
That is it. But yeah, midichlorians is what they put in the reboot, the prequel ones, where that was what the force was, is that people have a certain amount of like, I don't know, germs on them, basically.
By the way, really enjoyed the first Rick and Morty episode.
It's a good episode. I'm a little tired of them pointing out, like, here, the show is going to be extra wacky, guys. Like, I get it. It's a wacky show. Like, you need to always remind me.
I love that.
You appreciate the troll aspect of it, I think.
I do.
Russell Gage or OJ Howard at flex. This question I don't think relevant anymore, but I would go Russell Gage.
I don't have any Russell Gage, so OJ Howard.
And let's close it out with this. I keel you. Josh is dumb. I'd listen to the council over him. I agree. I listen to the Hot Dog and Sausage Council about everything.
You guys can listen to the Council of Wieners all you want.
Either way, we appreciate you guys for watching. We appreciate the National Council of Hot Dogs and Sausages for chiming in. As always, they're always here for us on every single show. Of course, we always appreciate fantasy drafts. So go to fantasydraft.com and use that promo code AWESEMO. The Hooters main event is locked for this week, but it is there every single week for you. The biggest rake-free contest you'll find industry-wide. Also, a bunch of other tournaments across NFL and NBA. So go to fantasydraft.com right now and use that promo code AWESEMO for your free 7-day trial and your entry into the world of rake-free DFS. And also use that promo code live before lock to get half off your first month of Awesemo. Plus, we have afternoon slate projections, night slate for the showdown going on too. Also, NBA stuff always going on for that. So go check out our promo code live before lock at awesemo.com/join. And lastly, tune in for EMAC and Fast Eddie Fear. I don't know what time that is. What time is the slate today?
5 o'clock. Slate
locks 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock Eastern time for the old guys getting it up, and I meant getting up jumpers that went a different way. But for our guys, Eddie and Matt getting after it as always. They do a great job on the weekend shows. Made some people some money yesterday, so tune into them at 5 p.m. Eastern. And Josh, any parting words here before Brian Hill ruins all of our lives?
Yeah, Sunday Night Football live before lock. Eric and Eric in the evening. Bears and definitely a different team. I don't remember who it is.
It's Bears-Rams.
Bears-Rams. I almost said Bears-Vikings. I knew that wasn't right. Yeah, so tune in to Eric and Eric in the evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And go Brian Hill, boys. Woo!
Garage Junkie Productions gently touch that like button. Yes, just lightly caress the like button as though you're a James Bond villain with your cat. And we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks for watching. Good luck in week 11. Go Brian Hill, go. And good luck. I said the good luck part.
Thanks, Fantasy Cruncher.